Port Adelaide are through to a prelim final. Up off the canvas. What a performance by Ken Hinkley and his boys.
Alrighty, hello and welcome to the Creekcast. My name is Dave, and as always, thank you for joining us in an incredible week to be a Port Adelaide podcast and a Port Adelaide fan. Your Port Adelaide Footy Club is through to a preliminary final after an epic win over the hottest team in football on Friday night footy. Hockball, more like sookball. Port Adelaide too good on the night, deserving winners even if it was by the slightest of margins. 11-9, 75 to 11-6, 72. We'll get right into it. No point fluffing around with it. But to start off, Jamie, our pre-game change of venue worked absolute wonders.
Yeah, that did the trick. We've got the secret sauce, so we know definitely where we'll be catching up next home game, whenever that may be. But yeah, it did the trick. Good vibes, good beer, and it just sowed the seeds for what was going to be a great night attending the football.
Yeah, it did. It's an incredible thing. I mean, I haven't been, obviously, with being overseas, I haven't been to too many home games over the last couple of years. So it was really, I mean, last week was fun with the Geelong game, but I was in the real throes of jet lag on that night for Geelong. So I was in a weird headspace. But this week, I'd recovered, had a week here in Australia now, and was really just ready to soak it all in. I stayed out in Port Adelaide on the night and obviously caught the train in. I'll get to the train back later on. But just being able to come in, wander into the casino, the district, which is the Port Adelaide Pirate Life Bar and the casino, if you're aware of it. Find a spot to stand, get $6 South Coast or whatever they were, which is a really good deal in this current environment. Good. Yeah, they were going down well.
I saw the price, like the board at the back, and that's a pretty good deal in comparison to what they usually charge for them. So,
what are they usually? Yeah. I didn't even look.
I think it was in the teens, because they were pints that we were drinking, and I think they're probably about $14.
Yeah, no, and it wouldn't surprise me. So yeah, but geez, they must sell a few because we're going to drink them quicker if they're not being irresponsible, but we'll just sink a few, get a few more in.
You just bit of pre-game merriment. Never goes astray.
$6 is the price when I turned 18, I reckon. So it's really thrown back to it's like throwing it back to 2005. But yeah, those are the vibes are good. We of course obviously caught up with you, which was good again. Friend of the pod and friend of mine for a long time. Steve was there as well. So
g'day, Steve.
Yeah, and had a really good time. Wandered across, and then myself and Steve took off to the hill. You went up to wherever your seats were, and then we just had to take in the game, which I want to start on something beforehand. Really wild, the crowd mix. And I understand it. Although I will say, just a small, whatever your proclivity is.
Proclivities?
Shout out Steve.
Proclivities.
Like, if you don't want to go to the game because you're worried about it and you're down in the dumps about what happened the previous week, whatever. But I do want to say, we don't have to, Hawthorn fans turned up and bought a lot of the spare tickets, I'm sure. And they were probably going to have a good turnout either way. But just if you didn't turn up on the night because you were just, if you have, struggling with money, you've got things on. If you've got a 50-50 and you're like, I've got a family, sister's 40th birthday, or I go to the footy because of where I'm at with Port right now, that makes sense. But if you've literally got nothing better to do and you've got a membership that could have got you there and you just decided not to go and you're comfortable with money, that's,
or didn't pass it on to someone else to use.
You should have been there. It was a great night. Would have stopped a few more Hawthorn fans being in there, which legitimately could have, that crowd was, I think it was 65-35 maybe, but when Hawthorn were on, they had a good amount of noise behind them, so it could have helped them.
Quite noisy.
Yeah, luckily it didn't, but these are the reasons you turn up no matter what, because, if you've got the means to do it and you've got no other reason to not be there, then should have been there, and you missed out on a great night. So, I'm trying to be constructively critical of anyone that decided not to go. It's fine. You're allowed to do whatever you want to do. It's a free country. But that's why I turned up. I just, you and I, we were all a little bit trepidatious going in there. We weren't super hopeful, but we were there because you never know. And what you never know is you're going to get just one of the epic finals games of footy you could ever go to. Just never. I mean, we as I said in the intro, we were deserving winners, I think, but it was very close most of the way through. We couldn't quite get that break on them. If we'd gotten just one more goal a couple of times, I think we would have got a break on them. But some umpiring decisions and whatnot, and just Hawthorn legitimately do have a game style that is very tough. Like once they get it going, we tapered them very well for most of the way through. But well, it was an incredible night. The atmosphere was crazy. The hill was a vibe, which is just fun to be a part of again. I had some good banter with some Hawthorn fans. Well, they were Hawthorn fans to start with, and then halfway through the night, as we were bantering, one of the guys just admitted to me, he's like, "We're actually Crows fans," and I was like, "Well,
Crows fans, I fucking knew it. Yeah, they would not have been alone, and they wouldn't have been, a minority group from what I have gathered, during and post Friday night's events.
Yeah,
I think there was a lot of crows in disguise on the night, which is kind of pathetic in its own right, if you ask me. But that's moving adjacent to your point. And you mentioned to me after the game that you had a little bit of a rant to kind of go on about the mix of the fans, because like as soon as the first ball was bounced, or not long after the first quarter started, because there was a lot of people stuck in lines right before the game was about to start, so the stands looked somewhat empty 10 to 15 minutes before the game started, and then it just filled up, and then once it did, you're just like, oh fuck, there's like a fair amount of Hawthorn supporters here. And then when you said that to me after the game, that's maybe a little bit of the reason why I put that little sentence in kind of my post-game tweet about like Port fans. We all fucking hated like the Thursday night prior, and there was a lot of people, like we mentioned in last week's review, who immediately after the Geelong game would just, no, I'm not going to go to the semi-final. There's no fucking point. But you just mentioned before, and or I'm paraphrasing, that like you go because A, you love the club, and B, because you never know. And really that's why sports fans are sports fans. And I think we might have touched on it last week as well. It's just like sport happens. Anything can happen, no matter how crap of a day you have. And if you've got another opportunity, it's amazing what can come. And history says that, specifically with the scenario that we were in. And sure, there's a large contingent of Port Adelaide fans who think that Port Adelaide, under specifically Ken Hinkley, are just going to continue breaking bad records for ourselves. And thankfully, that wasn't the case. And like you said, like, had it not been for a few interesting calls through the game, or a few passages of play on our behalf that left us wanting, and I'll probably touch on that in a bit. We could have shit it in. But I've mentioned earlier in the year that like home ground advantage is a thing. Like it's a thing. Like the noise of affirmation, all of that all comes down to your home ground advantage. Your home ground has I won't say it's a fact, but it's as close to a fact as you can get. And if you've had the strops on because your team didn't play how I wanted or expected them to play, and like you said, if you've got the membership, you've got access to the game, you don't have anything other to do, but you just missed out because they're just going to disappoint me anyway. That's a shit way to be a fan, in my opinion. But I'm obviously a much more optimistic person, and I've said on here I'm a bit more of an apologist when it comes to extreme issues of the club and what surrounds it. But it's our last home game for the year, so at the very least, like, say goodbye to the boys and wish them well. But so it invited a lot of Hawthorn fans to fill in the gaps. And Like I remember Connor Rosie's shot at goal in the first quarter. Like I was in the eastern stands and like the boo, like, I thought I was at a an away game
It
when he
was
was
really
lining up for
weird.
that first goal. Like where I was sitting, and I got to say, where I was sitting, I was looking straight down the barrel of the center line. Like I was
Hmm.
as central as you could possibly get. A great vantage point for the night in the third tier of the Eastern Stand. Just to as an aside, but
Hmm.
yeah, like when Hawthorn got on top, yeah, early in that game before anyone kind of knew that we were on, yeah, the Hawks fans were up and about, and they made their presence felt. And yeah, you can't help but think that's because there's a lot of stroppy Port fans who just threw the toys out the cot a little bit and didn't want to dig deep and support their club.
Hmm.
Um, so
Yeah.
I think I've kind of taken over from your rant a little bit,
No, you
but
probably you did it a
yeah,
lot more eloquently than I probably would have. So I'm glad you took the brunt the bulk of it, because that's really my thing.
yeah, well,
Again,
and
I'm not trying
yeah,
to, because there's a lot of Port fans that I probably would get along with that maybe did decide to do, just we're fed up with it. But it is just it's just like, we could have, if that game had been, if the Hawks had gotten a roll, that fan base, that noise of affirmation that they would have gotten from their 35 to 40% crowd, whatever. I don't know what the mix actually ended up being, but that's just how it felt in my mind.
hmm
That could have really buoyed them across the line, rather than a seething, very hostile, predominantly Port crowd that should have been, if it was, if everyone is happy and the vibes are good coming into it. The vibes were very good during the game and after. But yeah, it's just those kind of things can really go, just parrot like different other sports, like college football. It's like, your crowds are a huge part of the noise, and I know, I mean,
it's the
again, it's
theater
my,
of it all,
yeah, and my
the
team, like Oregon,
pantomime.
yeah, but it actually does help. Like Liverpool, I mean, Liverpool back in the heydays of the 70s and 80s, like the teams would talk about how the cop would just suck the ball into the net almost. That's how great the noise was. And
Yeah,
then I know the Michigan quarterback against Oregon back in the mid 2000s said that he couldn't, like, the noise was so deafening he couldn't hear the calls, and it was part of the reason they say that's part of the reason they lost. So AFL can be a bit different. It's not like the constant noise. It's not the back and forth, the rhythm of soccer, or the rhythm of American football. But these things can help or
particularly
hinder.
depending on fan base.
Yeah, exactly. But look, we got across the line, and that's for everyone that was there, they got to be part of a memorable night. I mean, for me, I haven't been part of a win in person for a couple of years now, so to have that be,
That's true.
um, I wasn't going to miss it either way, but I'm just so glad I did go because of that. And yeah, what you did get to witness was a Port Adelaide. So I mean, yes, I can be. There's a part of me that's a little bit frustrated we didn't see it the week before, but that's bygones be bygones. The pressure right from the off,
Mm.
you could see straight away that this Port team was on, and really, really impressive in those the entire first quarter, and really right up until I think it was about 11, well, probably almost halfway into the second quarter, when the tide turned a little bit
Yeah,
with some fortuitous umpiring decisions. Like, maybe we're there, but you don't.
yeah.
My thing is always call it both ways, and I didn't see much of that on the night, which is frustrating.
Yeah.
Free kick count ended up pretty even, but the start that before we get to that, we should talk about the start, because we started well. We didn't probably put the scoreboard pressure on, but at one point it was 3 goals, 6 to 2 points, which is, if it goes 6 goals, 3 to 2 points, then we're probably up and away. But
Oh,
that
just
that is
yeah,
that aside, it was an incredible start. The pressure was good. Everyone was contributing. We were getting some goals. Like, I've seen a far better starts get less rewarded as well. So I wasn't being too picky about it, and I knew it was finals football as well. So you got to take it. But yeah, I was so impressed with that start. And once I saw the first 10 minutes of the game, I was like, whenever Hawthorn does come at us, we're going to be able to. It's going to be a bit of a boxing fight. If we'd gotten out to that big start, and gotten out to 6, 7 goals in front, then we would have been fine. But I never doubted us from after that first 10, 15 minutes, because I just thought they just look on. And I was really, really impressed with, Connor Rosie was leading from the front after a week of some unfair criticism. a few people and friend of the pod, Timmy, I think it was Timmy Nash, that put on Twitter about his stats from the weekend, and I replied and just said his stats were pretty similar last weekend too. It's just no one notices it in an 84-point loss, but he was one of the leading tacklers and all that. And again, on this night, he was one of the leading tacklers and pressure act players as well. So he kind of led from the front. Willie Rioli was a man possessed. And then you've got Logan Evans throwing his body around, Jace Burgoyne, flying through the air like he's Michael Jordan in Space Jam to spoil balls. And just when you're getting that input from young players, your captain, experienced guys that have been traded in like Willie Rioli, and then Brandon Zerk-Thatcher was probably.
I was going to say, Zerk-Thatcher for sure.
Good run through the whole team right now, but just at the start from every line, Jordan Sweet obviously had a great game as well. You could see it line to line that in the first 10 minutes, everyone was the synergy was there. Yes, there was some disposal and it was just pressure, and it was a hot pressure game from Hawthorn as well. But right from the start, everyone was on song, and that's probably the thing that impressed me most, that we started with such positivity.
Yeah, and it's been spoken about a little bit since the game that I think we got 11 free kicks in the first quarter alone, and 5 of those were holding the ball free kicks. And I like that. Breakdown because obviously we don't see that as punters watching the game or whatnot, or looking at our phones. That's the subliminal champion data type shit that the broadcasters kind of get fed to them, and that alone, like 5 holding the balls in a quarter. You hear that or you read that and you're just like, yeah, absolutely. Like that just is a small indicator of the type of pressure that we were putting on Hawthorn. And like for our comments just before about not showing up or, avoiding the game, a lot of the people, Port Adelaide fans that is, that did rock up, I know that we were a bit similar and my family was similar. You go there with immense ambivalence to what was about to unfold, but that's really just a bit of a safety net because we didn't really know what we were going to, we didn't know what to expect. So you go in there, you kind of, you put your security blanket of, I'm not expecting much, I don't know how to feel. And in some ways it's a bit better than the Geelong game because I was a bit of a nervous wreck heading into Geelong. But this game, But then when the game commenced and the play unfolded and we were like a dog with a bone early on, it's amazing how quickly your ambivalence turns to, we're on here. We can fucking win this game. And then you start caring. And then you start to ride the waves of the game a lot more heavily than you thought you were going to coming into the game. But absolutely. Like for a quarter and a half, we just had the absolute measure. And like you said, we realistically should have been a lot further in front. I thought we dominated the game broadly from go to woe. And look, their first goal, I thought it was our fault. Kaushadea obviously was outnumbered 2-1. And for some reason, Alir just held him, even though Bergman, who is a fantastic intercept overhead mark, had plenty of space to deal with a contested situation. So we kind of let them back in. And then what unfolded after that was a bit of fucking annoyance through officiating, which has been well spoken about. And I mean, I listened to Crunch Time. I listened to a little bit live and then I listened to the full podcast on Sunday. And I mean, even when a guy like Jared Waitley is saying that he thought that the umpiring literally changed the flow of the game, it's not, it goes out of the box of whinging Port fans. And then when a lot of people can accept it from outside of the club, it just goes to show that a lot of our grievances were, noticed. Warranted. Exactly. But
I was just going to say, because I think the one that really got watching the replay when I got home from the Port Adelaide area yesterday, the one that really got under the goat of the commentators, who were all pretty much in agreement, even Luke Hodge, who later will have some grievances from us later in the podcast, but even the pro Hawthorn commentators on the call were really just like, that's not a free kick with the Jace Burgoyne tackle on, was it Moore? I think.
Dylan Moore.
Yeah. And I mean, anyone that has listened to the podcast all year knows that one of my number one things I like to talk about every week I can is Jace Burgoyne's tackling technique. He's a brilliant. He does like
Absolutely. Yeah.
and you just see that, and it's just so annoying that situation. First of all, just shouldn't. That's just not a free. Like that's this thing that the umpires been, and it was very obvious as well. I thought everyone
Oh,
seemed to think,
Dylan Moore definitely drove with his legs.
yeah.
I don't know if I
It was like it
necessarily
was.
want to get in.
It was like he was
Yeah, get
driving.
into the realm of. Sorry.
I was just going to say it was like he was driving like a rugby player driving with his legs. Like that's how much he was going.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. To try and get through a tackle, but it's like he drove to land on the ground, and like I thought we were towing the line a little bit. Like we were tackling with a ferocity that could get us in trouble. But the problem is those two examples, even though yes, both arms were pinned, there's a lot to say that they should not have been paid as dangerous tackles. Like I've rewatched the game a couple of times and various parts of the game various times, as I'm sure you have and many other Port Adelaide fans have. But I watched that Lockie Jones tackle, and there's a lot of momentum, a bigger guy that he's taking down. He spins in motion, but I actually think he pulls up on the tackle at the very last second. And when everyone in the stadium thinks that it's holding the ball, Port Adelaide fans, Hawthorn fans, commentators, like that's the shit that frustrates you the most. And then it compounded even further. And yeah, quite obviously let them back into the game where we were at, halfway through the second quarter, we were going, well, how far up can we be at halftime? Because this is like, we're not stopping. And we've got your measure. Like all of their outlets were cut off. It's been well spoken about and documented now. Like their running game, we just gave them no space whatsoever. We got our matchups right. And then, yeah, like you said before, we bring in a Josh Sin, we move Burgoyne to the back line, and some of their initial contested situations, they just observed and committed themselves with a kind of maturity beyond their experience or beyond their age. Like Sin's first quarter was fantastic, and it's probably his most prevalent quarter for the game, to be honest, but that's when we're setting the tone. And a lot of his possessions were so clean. He went back with the flight on occasion as well. Like there was nothing to suggest that he was overawed by the occasion, which, getting ahead of myself, is quite encouraging heading into our next game, which we'll obviously touch on later. But yeah, just obviously the leaders stepping up. And Zach Butters going into the first contest, balls to the wall. Like I saw someone online say that Hawthorn may have come in with a plan to rough him up a little bit, but he completely took that out of their hands when he lined up the first contest and committed to it 100%. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, well, we can't get in his head because he's coming at us. Like, so yeah, leaders leading from the front, but then those mid-tier players and those younger players committing to the game with confidence and then with the skills broadly to back it up. Like you said, it was a contested finals game, so there's mistakes and there's high pressure situations, but for the most part, yeah, super impressed with how we started. And yeah, like from that point on, we're just like, all right, it's game on. Like, let's fucking take this and get through to the prelim that we all think we deserve.
Yeah, absolutely. What was really impressive after the kerfuffle of some of the free kick stuff, and one note I wanted to make that just really highlighted just the discrepancy in how they were calling things was after the Jace Burgoyne one when there's a bit of push and shove, which was clearly, I love seeing the Port guys get around Jace, like patting him on the back after the tackle, because they were just basically saying, yeah, no, you did nothing wrong there. This is a mistake from the umpires. It was like passive aggressive dissent. Just go up and pat the player on the back rather than get in the umpire's face. But then they got a 50 out of that, just from some of the push and shove, where there wasn't the call earlier in the game where there's some push and shove on the boundary after, I think, when Todd Marshall's head, which, by the way, Carl Amon, down in my estimations a little bit.
What the fuck?
He should know. Like, Marshall's had these issues for a few
bravado.
years. Yeah. Just, you should be...
Yeah. And when did Amon? It was a couple of years now, and I think Marshall's
Amon's
head.
only been a year and a half into his career there now. Like he left the end of 2022. So
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
so and Marshall's had
Yeah.
concussion issues for four years now. I think it feels like that anyway. So
Yeah.
and
I thought
either,
it was more too, but regardless, like,
yes, it doesn't really matter. Yeah,
yeah, well, and whoever it is, really, the umpires had a moment to stamp their authority on the game at
for
that
them to
point in
set the
time, because
tone. Yeah.
not only did that happen, Rioli quite legitimately got picked up and dumped on the ground.
Hmm.
Like, and then the umpires going like gesticulating, like, just get up, get up. Not, and he's the most senior umpire as well. Roseberry was in the vicinity then.
Mm.
He had an opportunity to, yeah, set the tone, like you said, but just completely waved it. And it opened the game up to a lot of fuckery, to
Hmm.
be honest. Like, and it unraveled. Like, they had no real grip on the game. So inconsistent, some really contentious and harsh calls in some critical positions on the ground. And that, I mean, for a Port crowd that was a lot less than what we would have hoped for, that definitely got them up and about. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of getting back to just more positive things, I think that's what's really important about the setting the tone. Every time you said set the tone, I was thinking there's a really good show. This is just a little side note for a second. Anyone that's I haven't watched much Letterkenny, but there's a spin-off called Shoresy, which is very hockey based. It's Canadian hockey. And he just always like one of his little things is like when they're in the locker room, he's like, set the tone, boys. We gotta set the tone now. Set the tone now. Set the tone now. So it's just that's what we did. And
In a
what
heavy
was
Canadian accent.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's fantastic. I love it. But um, what was really important about setting the tone was getting that crowd of ours into the game because they were the more tentatively minded ones in the crowd. That the Hawk fans are there in their wizard hats and all that bullshit, and they're just like on the journey of their lives because they weren't expecting to be here. So they're playing with house money at this point. We're the ones that so us setting the
Mm.
tone, getting some biff into the game, fair biff, but just hard tackling, getting those free kicks for holding the ball.
Yeah, just showing that we're there to fucking
Yeah,
play. Like,
that
it's not
that
going to
got
be a
our
walkover.
yeah, that got our crowd involved. I can pinpoint the moment my mind switched and said, fuck yes, let's go. It was Jace Burgoyne flying through the crowd, like flying through the air and spoiling that one out. I just remember in that moment, my mind switched and said, we're on here. And not that I wasn't into the game, but, I was very, trepidatious again on the hill there, just wondering, wanting to see how we were in those. And that at that moment, I was like, yeah, we're on here. And that's what
Well,
I
because
think that,
he had a pretty bad game against Geelong, and his game
yes.
stood out for that in that regard. So
Mm,
yeah, um, yeah, I know what you mean. When a guy like him, yeah, it's that spoil, and then I think he took a contested mark as well, really cleanly,
mm.
and it was just like, all right, here we go.
He had a few really good ones where he was backing. He was kind of going back with the flight, and he was backing into contact. But he just taken on the chest anyway. Like his focus and maturity in those moments and calmness was really really impressive. And he had multiple moments like that throughout the game, as did a lot of players. There was a lot of players that just had those little 1% of moments where it's taken a relatively it's not an easy mark, but one that's falls into your chest. But it's just the fact that they would put themselves in the situation for the contact and know that it was coming, be ready for the bruise, and just take it anyway. Um, what I really loved after Hawthorn obviously get back into it a little bit was we never let them get on like their run that they had against the Western Bulldogs and the run they've had against some teams this year, including us earlier in the year when they got out to the good start. Their real momentum is built by 5 and 6 goal runs. We always responded pretty quick on the night.
Hmm.
It was after they got those three, after they pretty much tied up the score. Was that Darcy Byrne-Jones running goal from on the scoreboard 50,
Yeah,
and
the
a
Eastern
really
Wing
yeah
flank. Yeah,
yeah in my head it's ticking. If you can see the gears moving in my head, you just see me going east west
north, east,
east north,
southwest.
yeah,
Yeah.
up down. um, but yeah, like that one was pretty much a minute or two after, and it kind of got our crowd back inside, and it never let them build into that like or like there was never a moment where they kick 5 in a row and everyone's up and about. We're getting down in the dumps. Like we just
Yeah.
responded in perfect, like in just really, really key moments. Never let them get like 1 or 2 minutes without just never let that pressure build. Always had that pressure
Well,
relieving
that's
goal.
exactly right.
Yeah.
Like, and that 3-goal run where Shadir opened their account and then the 2 free kicks after it, like that was their biggest run of goals for the whole game.
Mm-hmm.
That was a stretch to 3. And yeah, and I agree with you because what was it? Dylan Moore kicked that 3rd goal at the 20-minute mark of the second quarter, and then DBJ kicked the goal that you were just describing 2 minutes later.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and yeah, those pockets of time, you're going, all right, yeah, like we might take a few punches, but they're still locked in enough to get it going the other way. And like, I said to you and I've said to others before coming into Hawthorn, like, it was a bit irrational, obviously coming off the Geelong game. Like, I was kind of happy in a way that we were playing against them because for all that they've done well this year, a little part of me said that they were susceptible
Mm-hmm.
uh, because of their inexperience. And like, funnily enough, yeah, the articles come out today that we were actually a younger side
Yeah, I
on
wanted to bring that
average
up.
and
Yeah.
less experienced, funnily enough. Um, but yeah, those little punches back that we gave to keep our noses in front and just snap that momentum. Those were those early signs to say that yeah, we're on. And even if we pop a couple of goals, like we're still in it enough to and like keeping our head enough to respond.
Mm-hmm.
And like that DBJ goal was yeah evident, and then the goal just before halftime was so important just to keep that theme going. Like because yeah, who kicked their goal? Oh, Ginnivan. Yeah, they got a
Mm-hmm.
good opportunity forward, and he snapped truly, and you go, and this is much closer than it should be.
Mm-hmm.
Like we really need a fucking goal before halftime just to stamp our authority again, and like a great piece of play to then yeah push it ahead. Because it got a bit chaotic there for a second, and like I've got to admit, on top of the finals frustration, and obviously that switch from ambivalence to like out and out
Locked in.
caring.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got frustrated. Like we opened the second quarter with 1 goal 3.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just thinking, like during their run, I'm going, we should be so far in front. And like we've had so many good looks at this and we haven't put them away. I desperately hoped that yeah, we wouldn't be reviewing another one of those games, which to be fair, we haven't had a lot of where we should win, but we didn't kind of thing. Like we
Mm-hmm.
said, some of the losses this year were like, yeah, we're crap in this facet or all facets.
Yeah, yeah, the big ones.
But it
Yeah.
had the makings of being one of those games where it's like you've dominated for the whole game, but your season's over.
Yeah.
Thankfully, yeah, it didn't unfold that way.
Yeah, it's interesting noting the goal scoring woes early because in my rewatch notes, I've got just in the third quarter when Narkle missed, we were at 5 goals 7, but from that point on, we go six goals 2 because we finished at 11-9.
Yeah,
Whereas and then in the fourth quarter, we're at 7 goals 9 to their 7-3. So we actually went from that point on, we went 4 straight to their 4-3. So it's funny how it kind of footy gods often, yeah, there's often, it's actually none of this stuff exists. It's all random chaos, but it was one of those games where
yeah,
if you want to read it in a certain way, you can go, well, it evened out because we finished every opportunity pretty much from halfway through the third quarter. Like I said, we go 6-2 from the point that Narkle misses. And at the point that the score is 7-9 to 7-3, we go 4 goals straight to their 4-3, which, they hit the post twice in their 4-3 as well. It's not like they were far
Mm.
off. Though Sicily's, I can't say Sicily's name anymore without seeing that
More
video.
like Missily.
Yeah.
That was
Uh,
golden.
yeah, James Missily. His was definitely fading left anyway. It wasn't like it shaved the inside of the post. It hit
It
the
did.
outside.
I was obviously freaking out. I was having like very, very intrusive thoughts
I
when
tr-
he took that
I
mark.
I dropped to my haunch. I was on the hill and I was like on my haunches, like just
Oh,
squat
my head
down.
was in my hands.
Yeah, I wasn't
Yeah, I
watching.
didn't know if I
Yeah,
wanted to watch it because ultimately I noticed like I'm not listening to any commentary or something, but yeah, Radaglia got pushed back, and then upon watching the replay, they're commenting on it.
yeah.
So when that kick goes in and Sicily marks it, I'm just thinking, how the fuck did we let that happen?
Especially he gets
How
a
the
real run. He gets a
fuck?
real run on it and
He gets
just
such a clean run at it.
and
Oh
look
my
great.
God.
Look, if one of our players took a mark like that, like it's a great mark.
Well, and Georgiades
And
did on the night kind of take a mark like
yes,
that
yeah, he did.
in
Yeah,
his own
yeah.
right. But
But
when
at
he
that point
lined
of the
up for
game,
it,
yeah,
yeah, I thought he was way too relaxed on the kick. And he did
mm,
the whole jut out to the right and then overcorrect it to the left,
yeah,
thankfully. Now, in saying that, there was a minute and a half left on the clock.
yeah. Because Asava
If
does
we want
take
to
a
have a
big.
go,
Asava
if we want to
does
have a
take a
go at
big.
Crows fans for crying about a goal
Yeah.
review that should have happened because there was time left on the clock for Sydney to respond. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, I would have been peaking had he kicked it. But yeah, there was time. I have faith that we're pretty good clearance game. I haven't. I say that it felt like we had a pretty good clearance game,
Very even,
particularly early. Even in the
very even,
end, they
even in the
definitely
end.
like we were smashing them, and then
Yeah,
they got their looks at it definitely. Um, but just talking about the middle two quarters again, and just opportunities lacking. There was even clearances that we didn't even generate a score from, and like
mhm.
forward forays that just went. Something that really frustrates me, and again, it might just because I watch my own side, fucking, every week of the football season, but the amount of times that we kicked it straight up in the fucking air when we had
Yeah,
perfect opportunities, had we put some penetration on some of these kicks to really put their defense under pressure and again push that lead out. Oh my God, like, yeah, finals, obviously being a parochial fan, pretty, can get pretty frustrated at times, but finals, I don't like who I am in those moments, really. But I was I remember at one point, like we seemed to be dominating. I think it was no, it was in the third quarter because we were going to the southern end, and I'm just going like we missed a perfect inside 50 opportunity, and I'm going, this is pathetic, and we're still up at this point. Like
yeah,
we're ahead. We're generally playing very good and good signs still, but I'm just like, excuse me, if this was a better team, like we'd be 4 goals down or something. And then this Hawthorn fan like turned around and looked at me, and I'm like, yeah, better team isn't quite the right word I was meant, but like I was kind of thinking like if this was Geelong, we would be 4 goals down right now because we're not
yeah,
fucking taking advantage of it and really putting our foot on the throat. We just like you said at the off the top, like we just kind of kept them in the game just that little bit, excluding all the favors that they were seemingly being handed. Excuse me. Yeah, just through our own inability to capitalize on some really, really smooth, like sexy passages to play. Like when Radaglia went into the ruck at one stage and
mm,
a little bit of a, yeah, dirty ball. And then it came out and he sprinted. And I think he got the hands off to someone. And again, it just went nowhere. So you're talking about how accurate we were in the second half, but in the middle two quarters, there was opportunities gone begging that we didn't even generate a score from.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, that frustration compounds, but at the same time, you're like, just keep sticking at it, like fix it up. Like these are the things you say as a fan in the stands, I should say.
yeah. It is interesting because you brought up the clearance game and whatnot. Like a lot of reading through the stats, like team stats, it was really even in so many areas. We did beat them in inside 50s, 51 to 42, but then probably speaking to some of that frustration, our efficiency inside 50 was a full 10 percentage points down from a 2024 average. We were 41% versus a 51% that we are on the year. Theirs was down a little bit, but they were still a little bit more efficient inside 50. So that's one of those areas that kind of made it closer than it should be. But then, you know, clearances were pretty, center clearances were 9-10. Stoppage, we beat them 33-30, but pretty even there as well. The two key areas that kind of make up for some of those areas that we did lose or underperform based on our year. Contested possessions were 158 to 142, which is, that's 28 contested possessions more than we average on the year. Turnovers, which we always, winning the turnover battle in close games is so crucial. It was pretty close, but it was 62 to 68 our way, as far as
Sorry, just to cut in, but
yeah,
if you
absolutely.
believe the right media analysts and whatnot, the turnover game is the real indicator of a good side or who's likely going to win the game. It's generally separated by your turnover game, whether how well you defend turnover and how well you capitalize on turnover. So
yeah,
it's really interesting point that you make.
And we actually average a couple more on 2024. We do average a couple more turnovers a game than Hawthorn, but on the night we flipped it +6 in our favour as far as turnovers go. So when we've talked about it a few times when we preview some of the big games that we've had a bit more time to go into, and you look at those areas, you go, this is where, if you flip the script here a little bit, this is where you can pull some of those levers and get the game in your favour. And obviously a lot of the things that we did to stop them helped that, like, stopping their run and stopping the hawk ball thing that they've been doing was a big part of it. And then these little statistical indicators, again, we've lamented at times this year our contested possession game as well, because they average one more contested possession average is very even, but they do average one more. So when you go +16 on a team that averages one more than you flipped it by +17. So you flip that one, you flip the turnover game. Those are two areas that we know. I mean, contested ball, especially in the second half of the year when we put together that winning run, contested ball, pressure acts, tackling, and all that stuff was those areas that we improved in that got our kind of into the premiership window on, talking footy or whatever, not talking footy, on the couch and all that
on the
stuff.
couch.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another thing as well, to go off the back of what you're saying, and I don't have the stats readily available. I don't actually know where to find this. It's probably another one of those hidden champion data ones, but ground ball gets obviously is being spoken about a lot. And to be fair, has done for the whole year. And it's something that we were really deficient in for a lot of the year. And then once we turned our fortunes, that was a big component of why. And then it's been spoken about on another level, particularly in finals, because the ball's on the ground more often than not. It's dirty, it's contested. And we won the ground ball gets by 8, where I think we just absolutely got pummeled in that regard against Geelong. So it's a bit of a thin stat to reel off. I'm just reading it on the summary here on the AFL website, but I think the broad opinion by your Kingies and your Lee Montagnas and stuff like that is whoever's winning ground ball, generally wins the game. So how good your turnover game is and how good your ground ball game is as well. So no surprise to see that we put our noses in front in that regard as well.
Yeah, and I do actually. You can get ground ball gets for individual players on the if you do your own stats
on the my stats,
on the my stats, which I guess you could probably figure out. I know Mark. I've got shout out to Mark, and shout out to everyone that had another comment from I'm forgetting his name now. I only just saw the tweet before we started recording, but a bloke from the US tweeted at us about 4 hours ago and said that he's just discovered the podcast from a recommendation from a friend. I'm just looking for his name now. David in the US. So thank you for coming on board.
G'day, David. We got a lot of Davids in and around the pod.
We've had old mate Dave Lloyd.
What do you call a group of Davids?
Is it? I was trying to think of something. I can't think of something. Is it just a day? Is it like when you're talking about a mob of sheep? Is it just a mob of Dave? Like... Yeah.
That's exactly where I was going with that.
A lot of Dave going on. But yeah, it's shout out to everyone that continually comes on and keeps joins us and listens. And we appreciate the support. But yeah, ground ball gets are in. I've got it set for pressure acts and in my screenshots, but I can see a couple of. Ollie Wines at 12 ground ball gets, Butters and Drew at 8 each. So some of those, those guys, and the only one I can see from Hawthorn that was in the double figures was Jai Newcomb with 13, which he had a great game with 31 touches, I think. So he was their best player.
Didn't have a fantastic last quarter.
No.
Do you know why?
Can you tell me?
I think
you have something there.
I think Ken got out the can. He was shaking up the can of WD-28 and said, "Look, I need to fix this one up." And the old WD-28, our very own Willem Drury, put the blanket on him.
Because he was the one that was providing a lot of their drive. They had little cameos here and there, like when Sicily got into the game at Missily, or but just overall, like there wasn't any one player that was really. They just had like Nick Watson had his period, but there wasn't any one player. Whereas you could just see a mob of our, like again, Connor Rosie, I think we didn't have like a great no one that got off the chain for 31 disposals, but we had such an even spread this time round.
Yeah,
which was really impressive.
This is another great positive to come out of it as well.
Yeah. It was really interesting looking back at like when we've been doing the 2004 stuff, which we'll get back into later, but the finals have taken precedent at the moment, and as well as my travel. But a lot of some of our big games in 2004 were often a good spread rather than any one person, taking. I mean, Byron Pickett won the Norm Smith medal with, I think, 20 touches. So, it's often if you can get a bunch of players spread out in rather than, any one, if you have one.
It's too many spot fires to put out for the opposition.
Yeah, particularly with our mix of players. I think I talked about it on last week's podcast about touches in the, NBA talks about how to spread out
you got to spread
because each star needs to have their influence somehow, and if you can work out the mix quite well, then it really benefits you, even if one player isn't being the fantasy star that you would like to if you're playing fantasy sports. If you've got like 5 or 6 players that are getting well, I guess if it's Supercoach wise, I think we had 3 players with over 100, but one of those being Jordan Sweet. Well, that was probably one of the ones that I wasn't as concerned going to this game because I've been so much more impressed and more trusting in Jordan Sweet as every week goes on. So I wasn't as worried, but still Lloyd Meeks had a really incredible year and come on to, really stamped his authority as well as a ruckman in the AFL. And as far as hit-outs to advantage goes, like the percentage Meek won in that aspect, but the fact that Sweet was just so dominant as far as hit-outs go, it made it not like it just wasn't as easy for Meek as he probably has had in some weeks, or maybe was expecting.
Oh yeah,
to.
Jordan Sweet.
I think Jordan Sweet's still quite under.
Took it up to him. Sorry.
Yeah, our second highest rated player as far as champion data goes as well was Jordan Sweet. So he just had an incredible game among many, but I think it's this kind of moment was one that you're really looking for Jordan's, guys like Jordan Sweet to step up and see what, because last week just didn't go well for anyone, but this is the kind of game that says to me like, Jordan Sweet's the number one, right? Like I wasn't expecting him to be the solution by the end of this year. Wasn't expecting Ivan Soldo to be so far on the outer that I don't think he's even like, I don't know if he's packed up his bags already, but just haven't seen his name mentioned at all lately. And but Jordan Sweet,
didn't see any Channel 7 crosses to him in the stands.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, really impressed by his game in there as well. I just tangents in there just because that suddenly came to mind as I was thinking about stats. But I mean, 52 hit-outs in any game is impressive, but in a final that's as hot
it's just stupid.
Yeah,
it's a bit ridiculous. Yeah. But like you said, and like that's an obvious personal record for him. Like you said, Meek by percentages in terms of hit-outs to advantage, had the upper hand, but just Jordan Sweet having those 52 hit-outs, it means that he made Meek work for the whole game. Yes, they obviously, 42 of them went to a contest or they were stayed in dispute, but it was quite obvious on the night that Lloyd Meek wasn't going to walk over the top of him. Like there's a lot of guys who obviously got their whack either intrinsically or extrinsically. I don't know if I've stuffed that up. I had it right there. Anyway, internally or externally, basically. But they lifted. Yeah, we've spoken about Jace Burgoyne, Jordan Sweet. There's some of these, backup singers, I guess you could say, like that. Yeah, they lifted. And look, in hindsight, it's easy to say, but it just goes to show that if you're going to lose a qualifying, if you're going to lose a final, make it the qualifying final because, yeah, these guys have had the opportunity to have a real good hard look at themselves in the fallout of that qualifying final to then go, all right, like we got to fucking do something about this. And nearly everyone lifted. I say nearly everyone just because I'm being a bit conservative, but like everyone who needed to lift lifted, and it just created a full team performance on the night. Everyone had their moments, and then there was the obvious ones who stood out across the whole four quarters. Like it's just got us back on track, like where we thought we were. And look, maybe it was Hawthorn at the end of their, end of the line, basically, and it clearly is now. We've knocked them out, but this is where we thought we would be. Rioli being scary, damaging, like, yeah, sweet, feeding our mids to their best effect. Connor Rosie setting the tone early. Zach with a bit of niggle. Our defense as a whole, like without our three first choice attacking half backers with experience, they were out. And like we've got this makeshift. I think it was like 5 of our back 6 or 7 are under the age of 21, or sorry, 21 and under. And then the outliers are Zerk Thatcher at 26 and Alir. Like the way they all worked in synergy together and were exchanging opponents at the right times, like handing over, I should say. Like, yeah, it just speaks to how much work they actually put in the fallout of the qualifying final. Like, yeah, they came in, what was it, a day or two early, just to really put a foot in it, put a stake in the ground and say, nah, we got to fucking, like, we've had such a good year. We've done a lot of hard work. We've bucked a lot of stereotypical trends. Like, this isn't us. Like, that's not us done. And they put it all out there. Sure, it was entertaining and it got a lot closer than what we would have liked, but the effort was there, the intensity was there, and the desire to win was clearly there for the whole game. And you can't ask for much more than that.
Yeah, that's it. That's all. Yeah, I think some people at work for me today asked how, what I would have been like if we'd lost in those last few minutes, and I said, oh, look, I would have been, dirty and annoyed and, sad, obviously, because it's my team losing in a final, but it would have been a different kind of, I would have been proud of the way we handled ourselves on the night enough. Like, yes, we wouldn't have done enough things perfect to get the win, but I wouldn't have been the same as I was after Geelong, because after Geelong, I was apoplectic about just how horrible and lack of focus, lack of intensity, lack of everything that we were.
Yeah, once it unraveled, it really unraveled.
Yeah. Whereas,
because like we both said, we were in that game, whether the signs were on, whether the writing was on the wall against Geelong and we were keeping our heads above water, we were in the game for the best part of a half. We just shut the bed and let it unravel, which we've done a couple of times this year. But stories change, sport happens. Like, even some some really interesting stats that a lot of detractors try to bring up in regards to, our club, our finals record, Hinkley era, whatever, it's really interesting how specific some of these stats come up, like to hang shit on Ken Hinkley. I think I'm a fairly, statistically minded person and put a little analysis. I like analysis. Clearly, we're doing this podcast, but some of the shit that gets brought up, how specific it is, like just to make a point. But yeah, look, we won a knockout final, so again, bucked another stereotypical trend that's hovered over us for the best part of 5 to 8 years. And Patrick, Patrick on Twitter, I'm not sure of his last name, but he's a Port fan, lives in Melbourne. But he had a typed up graphic that every final we play, and he's not a very harsh person, pretty jovial in a lot of his assessments, but generally hopes that we do well. But he had the graphic. I don't know if you saw it, but it was basically every final that we'd played since 2014. whoever we played in the final, if we'd beaten them in the minor round, we lost to them. And if
Yeah.
we lost to them in the minor round, we beat them in the final. And it was like every game in 2014 and until the weekend, that's how
Mhm.
the finals unfolded. Um, and again, that was the game that bucked that because we were either going to play Bulldogs or Hawthorn in the
Mhm.
semi-final, who we'd beaten the last time we
Both
played
of them.
them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's just another one of those really quirky um, notions that, yeah, we went the other way. We changed it. And, you know, the optimist in me goes, well, yeah, and the footy gods, like all that kind of superstitious kind of train of thought comes in, and you go, oh well, we've kind of gone against a lot of stereotypes this year. Hopefully, that's like this curse breaker. You know,
Mhm.
we got over the top in a knockout final. A team that we beat the last time we played them, we backed it up in a final, and yeah, hopefully, we
Yeah.
play two more games and we win them both. Like now,
Mhm.
um, I'm
Yeah.
definitely
Long
hoping
may.
for that. I know everyone listening would be.
Yeah, I'm already plan, gotta plan my registration for grand final tickets on Wednesday, which
Yeah.
the superstitious part of me goes, I don't want to think about that until after, but it's literally you have to do
No,
it.
yeah,
So
it's kind of saucy how the AFL, yeah, like
yeah.
every year we've made finals, yeah. Like I remember getting one of those registration things like, or you know, what kind of ticket would you like on grand final day? And I think it was like week one or week two of the finals, like maybe 2013, maybe maybe it
Yeah.
was yeah, Ken's first year. And I was like, yeah, wow, this is early.
Especially back then, you're like, I don't even know what that looks like. We've been rooted to the floor of the table for 4 years. Um, we got to get into these segments soon, but I guess we should touch on it just before. Like, I mean, it's been talked to death anyway, but
Oh yeah.
really, really amusing post match. the uh, the whole Kent Hinkley James Sicily thing. Um, I'm sure listeners that don't follow on socials or whatever will want to hear just us, talk about it for a couple of minutes. Um, maybe they don't, but I want to talk about it for a couple of minutes anyway. But
Yeah, maybe everyone's exhausted from it, but sorry.
yeah, it's
Well, I'm
happening again.
exhausted from it, but we're duty bound to discuss it.
Yeah, I don't understand the notion that just because you're a coach, and it's like this thing that it's coach, it's the end of the game, all this stuff. Yes, it don't be a dickhead about it, but Ken wasn't. Like it was literally just a little bit of banter, and probably
Yeah.
Ken's been lauded by the media and a lot of people that have common sense thinking about like his post match. Like after the St Kilda game, people were saying that was one of the greatest things they've ever seen because he was showing like if you're thinking that's good, his showing of emotion after the St Kilda game, this was the same thing. Emotion, you know, metabolizes differently depending on. He was elated. He'd heard a lot of stuff about the Hockball and Jack Ginnivan's comments. It was very out in the open. So does a little plane motion, which is hilarious, by the way, and just says, "You're not flying anywhere,
Absolutely.
Jack." And I think again, shout out to Timmy Nash again. He put it on Twitter. I just saw it like just before we went on air. I don't know when the tweet was from, but it just popped up, and how Twitter timeline works.
On the
Um,
algorithms.
yeah,
The
he
algorithms,
just
algorithms for you.
yeah, they're just doing their thing, and it came up at the perfect time. And he just said like, not enough is being said about James Sicily being the aggressor in that situation.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah, I've seen that
Yeah,
thread. Yeah.
it was if Hinkley says that and they just go, oh well.
Ah, fuck you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they don't go at him. The thing
That's
that's
pretty
been
much where it should have
ended.
lied. Like it should have
Yeah,
finished.
Jack Ginnivan should have just been like, oh well, but Sicily, the reason that he actually goes at him there is because he's still pissed off about missing. You could see him when he missed, he rubbing his face, and he's
Oh yeah.
yeah. So
He
that's
did
like
what I would have done in that moment. I do a bit of rub the old forehead, rub the
yeah.
yeah.
I,
So I
I
kind
definitely,
of I felt for him in the way that I knew exactly how he was
I
feeling
yeah.
in that moment, as happy as I was.
hmm But he took his emotion from that moment and took it to that post
Yeah,
game situation, and like it's ridiculous that Ken's been fined for that. The same fine that I mean the Jason McCartney thing I think was blown out of proportion as well. But the one that this year that got brought up a bit was the Alistair Clarkson, who was legitimately swearing and saying some things that, depending on your point of view, are very uncouth. He got the same fine, and so the AFL is trying to. It's
This is
ridiculous,
yeah.
and
This is one of the biggest overreactions to a post-match altercation in recent memory. Like, uh, I agree with Kane Corns when
yeah,
he said that, and I agree with it. Like, because like you said, for anyone that's not a Hawthorn supporter, and apparently anyone who doesn't host an Adelaide Crows podcast as well, would see that and go, "Oh, Ken's just being a little cheeky cunt, isn't he?" Like,
yeah.
sorry about the C bomb there, but yeah, that's like all it was. It's like he's being a little cheeky, yeah. Because what was he like 30 meters away, like, and he's
Yeah,
going,
and
"Not
he
flying
backed off of
anywhere,
it.
Jack."
Yeah,
Like
and
it
he
wasn't
backed off of
like,
it right
and then
away.
so when you listen to Sam Mitchell's very heartfelt, post-match press conference, and he's going on about an older gentleman who's been in the game a long time, saying some very aggressive words to a young player. Like, I I I had to like look through my cupboards for my tiny violin that I was going to play. Like, Jesus Christ. Like, yeah, he was 30 meters away, let's say, with a smile on his face, just
Hmm.
going, "You're not going anywhere, Jack." Yeah. And like, I was listening to a conversation today where, like, you can't actually see Ginnivan's face, but he didn't seem from the back. He didn't seem too perturbed by it. I can
Yeah,
imagine he would have gone, "Oh yeah, fuck you, mate." Like, but surely a
he
guy like that, no matter how old he is, that puts that shit out there, he would know. Like, we've all played sport, like sledging, banter. It's all fucking part and parcel of it, whether you like it or not. And I imagine he would have just been like, "Ah, yeah, fuck you, Ken." And Ken would have left, like, he was more than happy to just leave it at that. But then,
mhm.
like you said, James Sicily really fucking took it personally. And I didn't actually think about that, what you said about him still being in the moment, about him missing the goal. But of course he would have been. I would have been.
It was only a
And
minute.
I would
It was
have,
only two
I
minutes
would have,
prior or whatever, wasn't it? Yeah.
yeah. And I'm a bit of a, yeah, I can be a bit of a fucking, like, yeah, arsehole. Or like I can go a bit over the top sometimes in my sledging of opponents and whatnot. But like I live
You're a
vicarious.
cricketer. It happens, right? Like,
Well, yeah, and even then, like, picked as a bowler and, get on the chirp and in the field, any cricketers talk in the field. Okay. That's my
mhm,
public service announcement. Just fucking talk in the field because it actually keeps you involved in the game. Anyway,
mhm,
um, I lived vicariously through both Ken and James Sicily because I would have, like, I'm both of them. Like,
mhm.
I would have been the one like, "Oh, not flying anywhere," but I also would have been the one that took it personally, especially like if I just missed that goal, or in a cricket, if I'd gotten out for a duck and like lost the game because of it, or like, could have hit winning runs but got out. Like, yeah, I would have been like, "Shut the fuck up! Like, get out of my fucking face!" Like,
Mhm.
anyway. But to sum it up, though,
It should have been left at
it
that.
got
Even
out
like
of hand. It
Sicily's
got out of
reaction.
hand because
Yeah.
Sicily kept going back. And then, like he said, the next day, he kept going while he had the 300 gamer on his shoulder.
Hmm.
Um, Look,
Which
yeah.
that's on him because Ken was quiet at that point. So it's just like, what are you?
Yeah,
Yeah,
and then Ken was standing back, and then of course because they're right there, and Sicily's still going. Like Ken's just, I don't know what Ken said afterwards in that, excuse me, guard of honor, but it just kind of seemed like shut the fuck up, that kind of essence.
yeah.
Like
I think it was
like
just
Ken
like,
was standing back, and he's just smiling at him like, shut the fuck up. Like, yeah, I've said my bit, you've said yours, just shut the fuck up. Like you're just
yeah,
about to put a guy on your shoulders.
yeah. It was
That's
really
that's
odd.
how I saw it. Obviously biased, but
Yeah,
and then yeah, the club gets $20,000 fine because of conduct unbecoming, or however they phrased it,
which God,
adjudicated it.
I don't, that's it's a conversation for another day. But geez, that sets a precedent, doesn't it? Because conduct unbecoming, like
It's so, yeah,
what
so
because and
subjective.
to just back it up for just one minor second. I don't think I didn't comment much on what Ginnivan said on Twitter or anything last week on the socials because I was like, fuck it. I'd like it if I like that he's got that confidence and bravado. On the field, you love to hate him, but he's saying night to Collingwood fans like that stuff, and depending on the sport or where you are in the world,
That's
that stuff.
funny.
Yeah, but wherever you are in the
Yeah.
world, that can be conduct unbecoming because that can incite a riot depending on what country you're in and what sport you're playing. Like that stuff doesn't go down well some places. So, but we accept it. We accept the personality of Hawthorn. We accept the personality of the youthful exuberance, and I've really enjoyed. I like seeing it. I don't know why.
It's a bit like the Rochelle teeth thing.
Yeah,
like I said to you, like I thought it was funny. Just purely because I was like, well, you're going to want to have to back it up now, mate. Like, you hope your team wins.
Yeah.
And on both occasions, they didn't. So maybe someone from the Swans should jump on social media
I was going to say,
or on a radio show and say something stupid.
Does Errol Gordon want to come out and say something about how the Sydney Harbour Bridge is better than the Birkenhead Bridge or something? Like, yeah, let's go.
Fuck you, Errol. The Birkenhead Bridge is a modern marvel of architecture.
It leads to the Birkenhead Tavern. Or depending on which way you're going, the British Hotel or whatever you want to go.
The Colac Hotel's getting refurbished.
Yeah.
That's around a bit. That's around.
Look, there's plenty of pubs around it.
My geography mixed up.
Yeah. There's plenty of pubs you can find yourself to, or to the Pirate Life Brewery, or head down towards Alberton and go to Big Shed, or just go to Alberton. That's getting off topic, but yeah, what I didn't like, just to finish up on it, I don't know why players are allowed to have personalities but coaches aren't. The reason, and again, I do this tangenting onto other sports as a comparison, but the reason Jurgen Klopp is loved he's retired from coaching right now, but he's coached at 3 clubs for 7-8 years apiece. Some managers in soccer often, like Jose Mourinho, is going to have a contentious relationship with every club he's been to. Some other managers are the same. Jurgen Klopp's beloved at Mainz, beloved at Dortmund, and beloved at Liverpool. And he has had moments like when he charged onto the field to hug his goalkeeper when they, in the Merseyside derby, the Divock Origi winner. And he says afterwards, and he got a little bit of flack for that because it's like a coach shouldn't charge onto the field when the game is technically in play. But he's just like, I don't know, I get white line fever, and he's just like, this is not me in general, but when it comes to the game, I'm passionate. I ride the emotions with my players. This is something that coaches in NFL, college, NFL, this thing wouldn't even be an issue. This is the other point. This thing wouldn't be an issue in American sports. It's just like Australia is so soft about this stuff at times.
So precious over something that is really nothing.
Yeah, you brought up Tall Poppy last. It's just like as soon as someone shows a little bit of personality and a little bit of exuberance, and just because they're which another funny Twitter comment this week, because I think Luke Hodge and Sam Mitchell referred to, Ken as a 60-year-old man. Someone on Twitter, and again, I don't know, I don't have the name, and it's going to be too far down the notifications from all the Hawthorn fans having a crack at me. Someone just chimed in and said, as a 57-year-old that gets referred to as in my 60s sometimes, we really claim those 3 years, so Ken should sue for ageism. He was being very joking about it, but he's just like, don't call a 57-year-old man 60. We we want every one of those 3 years until we get to 60. So, it's just I don't know why a coach isn't allowed to have personality immediately after a hot final like that. And I think a lot of it's good to see. Obviously, I think Dave Lloyd, again, friend of the pod and guest of the pod and friend of the Outer Harbour train line out to after the game.
Friend to some.
He put on Twitter just like a post like saying, "Oh, here's the main media personalities that are having an issue with Ken." It was like pictures of Mitchell, Jordan Lewis
in their heyday,
and Derm and Derm, in all in their Hawthorn gear, and in particular. I mean, this is what riled all the Hawthorn fans that I've had in my mentions, and it's the first time I've ever had to mute notifications on tweets over the weekend. And I'm fine; I was just like muted and let them go. But all these players,
they would have hated it more that you didn't respond.
I didn't respond to anyone. Once some Hawthorn only fans girl popped in there, I was like, yeah, I've got to mute these. This is getting ridiculous. So I didn't see anything else. And there's so many people just like, oh, would you say to Luke Hodge in the street that he's a dirty so and so, and I'm like, well, no, I don't walk up in the street, but if I'm in a conversation about what happened on the weekend, I would bring up the fact that he tried to kill Chad Wingard and figure out what our moral compass is here, because what
Yeah.
like all of these people, like the Kick It Forward guys from the West Coast, like from that do great social media content, did a
Yeah.
really really good short video just with Derm being all precious and bringing up that he stomped on someone's head in a game and just called it something, So all these
Oh, there's a
players,
lot of glass house activity,
yeah,
like,
Sam
and
Mitch,
sanctimony. There's a lot of preciousness.
yeah,
Like, I just like
there's
can't believe it.
all these guys when they did this, like Sam Mitchell doing his, and I didn't mind like Sam Mitchell doing his little like injecting motion towards the Essendon players back in the day.
Yeah, I thought it was funny at the time.
Yeah, but now it's just like if you're gonna,
Like, yeah.
you can't suddenly become a coach and lose and not understand that this game is a passionate game. And coaches get to ride
Yeah,
that passion too. There's no reason that coaches can't be as passionate as their players, because that's what we want. We want the coach to be, and Ken is lauded for being a player's coach and being very in tune with them as people.
yeah,
He's not the step back and let them do their thing. He's very involved in their lives. He's and really loved to close it off and bring back the positivity. Connor Rosie, like, kind of very you could tell there's a tinge of emotion in his voice when he's being
yeah.
interviewed after the game. He referred to Ken as a father figure. Like, he's like a father. Like, so this is the relationship he has with his players. So, and some of the players might have been like, oh, Ken, you went a bit over the top there. I don't know. It would have been interesting to see what the conversations were in closed doors, but they all have the understanding that this is the kind of relationship we have. So, Ken was just, riding for his boys, and I love it. I love it from my coach while he's our coach.
Yeah,
That's
well, and that's one
yeah.
thought that I've had. It's like, if you've got any doubt, like, that Ken's not invested in the team and the club and the club's fortunes, like the people who fucking go on about Ken only being here for a paycheck, like, he puts it out there all the time,
He's
like
he's
how
earning
much
that
he
paycheck.
cares.
Mm.
Well, just how much he cares for the club. He has his boys back. Like, and every time he does show emotion, people react as if he's taken off all his clothes and he's started streaking around the ground. Like, it's fucking stupid. And as well as that, the narrative that seemingly has come out, or the way that I'm interpreting it, that he's like the first coach that's shown any outward emotion ever in any degree. And I'm
Mhm.
like, hang on. Fucking when you think about Hawthorn, like, Alistair Clarkson's a pretty fucking emotional person, and they got a fair bit of success under him. Kevin Sheedy, like,
The scarf
among
waving.
others,
That was a thing between
like,
Essendon.
what do you mean? What are you
That was the thing
talking
between
about?
Essendon and West Coast for 10 years straight after that 1993 or 1994 game when Sheedy waved it. West Coast fans would wave their scarves after they beat
Would wave
Essendon all
it.
the time.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
created something out of
Yeah.
it. Like, that's what we should embrace.
Hmm.
And uh like, the funny juxtaposition was, though, that Ken seemed fucking locked in for the whole game. Like, they panned to him on the screen and he just looked like, nah, you fucking here. Like, he seemed like a drill sergeant. And then when that final siren went, it's like the Ken that the players and the majority of fans love, like, being a bit of a cheeky sod. And
But he
yeah,
probably
I
had
liked
like
locked in Ken, though. And
he
I,
probably had a
yeah.
lid on it for a lot of the game, and letting that pressure valve off, there's going to be something that comes out. He's human. We're all human. We have different ways that we metabolize emotions, but the fact is that Ken's never got himself involved in anything um, to the point of, again, the Alistair Clarkson stuff, not wanting to bring him up because, he's got a good history at our club as well. But like, Alistair Clarkson's actually got a contentious history with this stuff. Ken just said, "You're not getting on a plane." Apparently, like, from all reports, he didn't even swear.
I
Like,
know.
that's the thing.
I
Like,
know.
didn't swear, didn't show aggressive body language. He was smiling and laughing. Like, it's just like, that's what the ridiculous thing about it is. It's like the way he finally showed emotion in that moment, and was showed a little bit of jarring to opposition, was the most jovial,
Yeah.
cheeky bugger stuff that you could do. And he's got a 20K fine. So it's just the AFL was really
If
soft at,
if you didn't
yeah.
watch if you didn't watch the game or the post match, and you just read what he was being fined for, or what some of these Hawthorn and Crow supporters will have you believe, that he walked straight up to Jack Ginnivan, eyeballed him, maybe even
Mm.
tugged on his shirt and said, "You don't fucking say shit to us, like, you fucking little stupid kid, like, shut the fuck up. You're not going anywhere." Like, that's what
Yeah,
Like
Channel
again,
7
if you
kept on
didn't watch
referring to
it,
it as a tirade. Like, I was just like, fuck off.
oh, it's all right.
Ah,
All the superlatives that well, it's probably not superlatives, it's negative, yeah, but
I
yeah,
almost,
like all the descriptors that they use, and
I was
Channel
sitting,
Seven fucking loves it. They love it. They
it
love
was
an
even
opportunity
worse.
to fucking put some mail on it.
I was watching the Sandful yesterday afternoon, the semi-final, whatever it is, between Centrals and Glenelg.
Yeah, Glenelg
Um,
Centrals was it?
yeah, it was, yeah, and Glenelg got through to play Norwood, so just light that stadium on fire
Just
next
a
week.
shit situation.
Yeah. um, and like Elspeth Hussey, who is just, not less said about her the better as far as it comes to
Ah,
Port Adelaide. But the halftime, I'm just sipping on my iced coffee, like, I was finishing off some notes when we were watching the replay, and her little news break at halftime was like, and yes, and Ken will be answering for his tirade tonight. I spat my iced coffee. I was like, oh, so now it's a tirade, and then Sunrise this morning.
tirade.
And then Sunrise this morning, like Mark Beretta again was referring, like it just became a thing that it's just referring to it as a tirade, and I'm like,
That's it. Like these
it's very,
narratives just go wild
it's
these days.
irresponsible. It's yellow journalism at its very worst, because it wasn't like tirade is a very loaded term. So it's just like, and it's being deliberately used to drum up clicks or whatever you want to say. But it's just like it's taken the narrative so far away from what it actually was, which is just disappointing. But we shouldn't spend too much more time on it. But myself, I'm very pleased to see it, and you've got to metabolize it the right way, like make sure it doesn't ride over into next week. But I mean, I remember in 2004, after we won the prelim against St Kilda, people were saying we over celebrated, and that didn't turn out that way, did it? So it's all about you.
Vindication.
Yeah. So I don't think it'll ride over. Whatever happens next week won't have anything to do with it or whatever. But yeah, it shouldn't have. It's a story that in any other country, like particularly in the US, in US sports or even in England, I just don't think this kind of stuff. Because in England, you see managers shake hands and always get into a punch on if it's been a contentious game. Whereas this was just not even close to that situation. So it's just like Australia just needs to stop being so fucking precious about this
Ken
stuff.
did the
And
right
actually,
thing and he shook Sam Mitchell's hand before he got cheeky, which I like too.
good. He's just
And Sam Mitchell afterwards would have been like, hang on, no, you just shook my hand. Don't talk shit to my player.
yeah. Oh,
I
I
love it
love.
too. Like I've said it a
Mhm.
couple of times, give me players who give a fuck. Give me a coach who gives a fuck. Like,
Yeah,
like
yeah. You'd be fine. Yeah, it's nice to see a response out of it, and it's nice to see that it happens at the right time. It's not like players shushing a crowd at 3/4 time when there's still 20 points in it or whatever. It's Ken
mm.
gave him something back after they won, which is the perfect time to respond to something that happened during the week. So I loved it, and long may it continue. Well, I guess unless Ken wants more money out of his bank account, maybe not, but maybe the
Yeah,
AFL
because
will
I
do.
genuinely hope Ken is just as chirpy if he is privileged with standing on the dais on the 28th of September and holding a cup in his hand. I hope he's just as fucking chirpy then.
Yeah.
If yeah, he is lucky enough to get there.
He will have absolutely earned the right as well. Did you have anything else general before we get into the awards? Because I know there's a few stats we'll get to in that time. So, but I wanted to give
Yeah,
you the
look, we should probably move on.
yeah, we've got plenty more to get to. Certainly. So, all right, the segments, and obviously we start off before we get to the goal of the week and all that stuff. We start with the spotlight, which is a far better week for it this week. Which we'll also say we actually, I don't know if you noticed when you listened back last week, we completely forgot to do watch list last week, which is probably the most
I
watched,
realized that, yeah,
but
afterwards we got
probably
on a few tangents.
yeah.
But I think
Um,
I looked through my notes and I had the whole team, and I think we spoke pre-recording about how we were going to just, yeah,
yeah,
touch on the fact that, and too
everyone
many
bad, but
tangents.
yeah, this week's a lot better for it. For Spotlight, which I get to go first in this one, I'm going to spotlight someone that has gotten a lot of love from fans out of the weekend's game. And a few people say even saying one of his better games for the club, and someone that has been derided at times this year has been Lockie Jones. But I think he was one of those young players that we were talking about earlier that really set a tone for himself, and in doing that, set a tone for the team in the first quarter. Some real gut busting runs, good marks, good penetration when he went forward. Didn't have like his overall stat line was 11 disposals and 3 tackles and a couple of marks, but 5 inside 50s, which I think speaks to just that some of that early drive in particular in that first quarter. I just think he set a tone for himself and set a new standard for himself going forward as well. Looked a lot more confident and kind of playing maybe a little bit more of a different role as well. But I just really loved his game. I've always been a fan of Lachie Jones. I think just with his body
Yeah.
and body and some of his raw skills, I've always been, we've all just been waiting for him to bring it together and a bit more. And in a game that had just all the stakes on it, I think he had one of his better ones for the club. So I had to spot him. I thought just you know not a standout game if you look across the stat sheet, but as far as his um, impact on the game, I just remembered there's someone next to us on the hill who every time Lockie, it was a couple, young couple, probably in their early 20s. Um, every time Lockie got the ball, just both of them, Lockie! And it happened a lot in the first quarter, obviously, as I said. And I finally just looked at him and said, "Do you know him?" And they went, "Well, not really." But and then the bloke goes, "I bought a car from him though," which makes sense. Lockie's big into his cars.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
he started pretending to talk on the phone and saying the things he would do to Lockie, and his girlfriend started hitting him and saying, "Stop embarrassing me." And so that kind of speaks to the. I'm not going to go into what he was saying, pretending to stay on the phone because it's a bit uncouth even for our podcast. I loved it, by the way, just on the hill, classic hill stuff. But I think that speaks to the impact he had in the first quarter as well as the impact it had on some relationships on the hill that night. But yeah, loved Lockie's game and loved how he helped set the tone early for the team. And one of those players that you were speaking about that helped actually bring our age profile down below Hawthorn's, considering the narratives going in. Lockie was very much one of those players that's in that 21 and under bracket. I think he is still. He might be 22, but he's still very young because he was 17, 18 when he got drafted. So he looks like he's 30, but he isn't. So yeah, he's still got a lot of growth to go in his game. But this was one of those games that he can take the tape for this, and the coaches can go with him and say, "This is the stuff to do."
Yeah, this is the great thing about it's the great thing about finals football is that you don't need to fill a stat sheet. You just need to make your moments count. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's the thing that stands out for everyone is that he made his moments count. He affected play. Like you said, he took there's one mark in particular. I don't know uh what part of the game it was, but he came through a few players. The
Mm-hmm.
ball was in the air and he just split a couple of players and just took a strong grab. And then, yeah, when you layer on top of it some of the link up play that he had, the one that has kind of been spoken about more than others, where he cops it in the face and he's kind of like, oh shit, that hurt. But then he's there for the handball and then he starts
Mm-hmm.
the chain of play, which I believe results in oh, that's the goal at half time for
Yes, yeah,
Rioli.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, like we've spoken about him a few times, like you said, like a guy who's only just notched 50 games recently. And I would say,
Had a
like,
few
yeah,
injury
they're saying
troubles as
it's his,
well.
yeah, and
Mm.
thankfully it's been, I think, I don't know, it's a long season, but less than he's had in previous years. He's had
Mm-hmm.
one or two niggles, like coming out the back of the showdown. I think he did a hamstring. But I think he's had a fairly good run at it this year. And like, even in our reviews, we've said that's Lockie's best game for the club. That's Lockie's best game for the club. And then, yeah, in a final, although, yeah, his stats, like you said, aren't just filling the sheet. He made nearly every one of his possessions count, and the impact that you have per possession in a final is much more important. So, yeah, he's had three or four best games for the club or best games of his career this year. So that would kind of
Mm-hmm.
tell you kind of the progression that he's on. And again, when you reflect upon the negative feedback that certain people are quick to provide about him, it's just a bit, yeah, unfounded in my
Yeah.
opinion. And he showed like Lockie Jones at his best is a damn good asset for our club. And like I even believe that he has the capabilities of being a pack splitting like midfielder. Um, if he gets his cleanliness to a much better consistency level, like his one touch versus two touch nature that we've kind of spoken about a little bit across the season. But he put it all out there on Friday night for me, and yeah, I agree. It's really he was actually my first listed for Spotlight
Mm.
as well. Um, so moving on from that, my Spotlight then goes to Brandon Zerk Thatcher. I think he well, to start off, he spent the whole game on the ground. He didn't come off once. But just his presence, his marking, his intercept marking. He even got on a few runs as well, which
Mm.
I liked. It just showed that again, he meant business. He was there to win the game for his club. He wanted to impact as much as he could. That determination to put your stamp on a passage of play and therefore the game was quite prevalent. He used it well. Uh, he's been a great foil for Aaliyah. And Aaliyah, while he had some good moments, I thought he had some moments that let himself down in this game. So to have the rest of the team lift around him, and in particularly BZT, like Zerk Thatcher's had a great year.
Mm.
Like, and when we've had bad games, yeah, our recruiting seems to be the headline, and he gets obviously bundled in with that, and they'll play one or two of his mistakes that every footballer makes in a fucking game of football, but it's not telling the true story of how his year as a whole has come together. He's had many, 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 many more great games than he's had bad ones by far.
Mm.
And yeah, he was vital on Friday night for me, and he impacted as well as he could have.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. He was, yeah, only he and Aaliyah spent the 100% of the time on the ground. But yeah, for Zerk Thatcher, he had like 9 intercept possessions, and um, yeah, just he was ever present. He was one of those other players I noticed early and often. He's an honourable mention for me in my which I won't step on if you've got him in your votes, but he's honourable mention for me when we get to there. 'Cause I didn't
Mm.
quite get him in there, but he was one I very much was close to, and I think he got into the coaches' votes. Um, I didn't realize I did coaches vote. I don't know what that post was about, but I was a bit
Yeah,
confused
it's the
about that
Gary
post.
Ayres medal,
Oh, okay.
best
Oh,
finals
yeah,
player.
yes, yeah. So he was in. He got
Yeah.
one vote. He got one vote in there, which I assume, I guess, came from Ken. Um, but hey, that's good recognition from Ken, and similar probably speaks to probably some of the recognition that's coming from you and I, and how we've thought about his game, because he's very ever present in my mind after the game, and certainly, yeah, I thought as far as our defensive players goes, I think he beat Ilya on the night. Which, hey, if those two are competing for the best defender on the night and both of them contribute to wins, and I don't care who wins it, it's good, healthy competition to have. But yeah, that's a great one to pick because, yeah, I mean, he's one of those ones that came in this year, like he and Sweet both probably came in as the most question marked recruits, and they're both been key pillars in a semi-final win. So it just goes to show that
Yeah, there's
sometimes
actually an argument for who is the best pickup.
Mhm.
Even if you just want to go within Port Adelaide rather than the whole AFL, like
Yeah,
they both have claims to that mantle.
yeah, and I guess I mean they're both playing a preliminary final, whereas a lot of the other more high-profile recruits around the league, aren't. So yeah,
Womp
incredible.
womp.
Yeah, I love BCT. I think ever since the first couple of games, we've been um, highlighting him a fair bit on the podcast, and yeah, watch list. It's a tough one after this game, and I'm probably gonna. I'm only bringing this up again because I want to. I guess it's like not patting myself on the back, but just I want to bring it up because I have brought it up a couple of times this year about my concern and for the future of Todd Marshall, and it's so disappointing. I'm actually using the watch list to give him a bit of praise because I think he played a nice game. Obviously kicked a real crucial goal,
So do I.
and
Yeah.
was very very much
He kept the ball
involved.
alive for our small forwards as well,
Yes, yeah.
in my
It's
opinion.
a lot of those things that I think you've brought up a lot, and certainly I've noticed as well that he does a lot of things that just fans don't notice because you're all looking for him to do. And we both agreed at a lot of times this year that he hasn't done enough of that other stuff that we needed to do to warrant his spot, but he came back into this, this crucial final and played his role as best as he could. Um, so it's really disappointing because, and as I was watching the game, I was like, geez, he can play a role going forward in this final series, and then again, innocuous knock. Not that it is a knee to the back, but it's one of those ones that happens a lot in football, and you don't. But the fact he's out with concussion
Yeah.
protocols again, um, it's really unfortunate, and it really has me more and more concerned. Every time this has happened, I get more and more concerned going forward for his career. Whether going forward wearing a helmet or something, it has to probably be a thing at this point. But if he's
It
not, it's just
doesn't, like, from all reports, wearing helmets don't change anything. It
it's probably
protects you
like,
from getting a cut on the head,
yeah,
but in terms of concussion, like
yeah, because it is the rattle to the
the
head, right?
helmets that we currently have, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly, yeah. So
yeah,
unfortunately, and my old man was like, "Oh, he's going to be like Will Pukowski and like
oh
who's
yeah,
Victorian cricketer who's had to retire." And yeah, in reflection, I'm like, "There's been plenty of AFL examples, like,
mm,
yeah." But my old man doesn't really care about most teams apart from Port. So yeah, you've had
yeah,
many examples even this year,
mm,
particularly this year, of
yes,
retirements due to, and it looks like it's headed that way. And for a guy that's had so much misfortune in his personal life,
hmm
if this is how it's going to eventuate, which look, it's like you don't know if you're going to get a full game from him at the moment, and that's
that's the
scary.
that's the
Like,
problem is, yeah,
again, like as a parent, but even as a fan, if you're a loved one, like, yeah, you're just going, you because they seem to be more and more innocuous.
hmm
Like the yeah, every instance that it happens, it's
yeah,
quite alarming
yeah,
and
and it is
sad.
disappointing because he is a much loved figure at Port, like as much the playing amongst the playing group and coaches and everyone that you speak to couldn't speak more highly of him as a person and as a professional. And we've certainly, from a playing standpoint, we've seen some really great highlights from him. Some almost breakout times. It feels like this kind of stuff has just hampered it a little bit. And then, yeah, like not to be cold hearted about it, but from the just purely the fans and even the planning standpoint of coaches, you just can't go into games with a guy that could get a tickle. And that's being a little bit facetious, but it is just that's how innocuous the hits can be. It can just be a little glancing elbow that just rattles the head. That's how, if you read about concussions, like the exponential effect of each head injury if they're not fully recovered and the head just it takes a long time. And yeah, it's just you can't go into a game with that being a genuine consideration that we might have to sub this guy out in the second quarter, the third quarter, and go against, because now that the sub is a tactical sub and not a concussion sub, you might be wanting to use that sub differently, and you can't if you're going
Yeah,
into a game with a hand tied around your back, behind your back, if you're having to do it. So that is the game point of it. But just as a person, you want to see, obviously Todd Marshall have a good long life ahead of him. So unfortunately, it doesn't
mm.
seem like the way it's going that football will be conducive to that, which is sad because we
Yeah.
all
Well,
wanted to
and
see.
like we've spoken about other players from a football point of view, we
Mm,
hope for the best. We hope he has a great career,
mm-hmm,
and yeah, and then yeah, when you add the personal life on top of it, like you said, yeah,
yeah. So
it's
yeah, no, it is.
disappointing.
We hope for the best going forward. It feels like, because that's why I wanted to do use that my watch list spot to kind of bring that up a little bit, just to have a couple of minutes on it and wish him all the best. But it just and genuinely, as you say, I actually am disappointed he can't be a feature going forward, because if we're still, the forward line is a little bit of a in the air area, even though it's going, Mitch Georgiades had a great game or whatever, but it's still, the forward line mix is still just such an interesting thing with that Port at the moment. It just sucks that, having had a bit of an impact in a real tight finals game, that it looks like he's probably, you get it, just at this point you've got to draw a line through him for the rest of the year if you can't get through one game without getting a knock. So especially at this
Yeah,
point, yeah,
yeah. Well, he's certainly not playing the next game.
yeah,
Yeah, we'll wait and see from that point on. But
hmm
yeah, moving on to my watch list. This one was kind of obvious for me on the night. My boy Frankie Evans.
yeah,
Yeah, I said to my old man during the game that he kind of was clearly the 22nd best player on the ground for me,
hmm
from a Port point of view. Um, and look, Port Magpies didn't make the finals, so yeah, we're limited for selection holistically. But I just thought he, in a game where, yeah, everyone had their moments, and like, I guess his biggest competition is Quinton Narkle and I guess Jed McEntee. So
hmm
that's interesting. I thought Narkle looked dangerous to an extent, not in
He
the
was more
same vein as
involved.
some other
Yeah.
players, but yeah, Narkle, we've spoken about Narkle like predominantly. Obviously, he's been the sub and he had the benefit of playing 62% of the game on ground this time around. But he just seems to get involved and he seems to take the ball a lot cleaner. He seems to be a bit more assured with some of his disposal. He let himself down in some regards that way, but yeah, when you're the 21st, 22nd, 23rd kind of best players, you need to make sure that you put in a decent shift. And um, I just thought like I've loved what Frankie's done in certain portions of the back end of the season, and I acknowledge that yeah he's capable on his day to kick two, three, four goals. But it's the whips are cracking right now, and you don't want to be the 22nd or 23rd best player when yeah there's still players that can come in and take your spot,
Ryan Burton's
albeit without
possibly.
a proper match
Yeah.
practice.
Yeah, I mean, Ryan Burton, if he's, I don't know if he's going to be possibly available this week, but
Depends how tight his calf was
yeah.
or is. Yeah. But then, yeah, Jed McEntee, we know the coaches like him and what he can bring. Again,
Mm,
playing at the SCG. Um, yeah, what will they want? And without
slower
having
ground.
a real tangible effect on the game, you leave yourself uh, open to omission. Uh, one good moment though that I will speak of is he had the presence of mind to centre it. He was aiming for Rioli, but then it ended up being the Jace Burgoyne goal
Mm,
in the fourth quarter. So while he didn't get the effective disposal way that he wanted to, it was the right thing to do, and realistically should have been a Rioli mark and set shot goal from 25 meters out, pretty much straight in front. But it ended up as a goal anyway. So just to finish off kind of
pretty
critiquing and
nice one.
criticism of his
Yeah.
game. Yeah, yeah. Just wanted to highlight one instance where I thought he contributed well. Oh, and that contested mark on the other flank in the same quarter was crucial at the time
Yeah.
for vibes and energy. But yeah, I just think that in a game where yeah we had a lot of contributors, he didn't quite
Yeah.
bring enough to put his spot in the side out of question.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, just looking at Narkle had 400 meters gained versus Frankie's 70, and Narkle had 13 touches, only at 38%, but then, Frankie's were only at 20%. He's five. So
Yeah,
when you look at if you're comparing apples with apples there, it's just like Narkle's, yeah, maybe a little bit burned the ball a little bit, but he had the 5 1%ers and Evans had one. Like, so there's, five inside 50s versus Evans one. So Narkle, while maybe burning the ball a bit more than most, still didn't burn it as much as Evans. So that's the kind of things you have to look at when you're comparing those two. So, yeah, but I do love him. I love
I
what he
agree.
brings. It's just like, yeah, as you said, it's like when you're trying to work out who that 22nd player is, these are the things that come into consideration. So, yeah, no, a good one to watch. Alrighty, let me scroll back down. Goal of the week, you get to go first. There were some fucking good ones this week, by the way. So it was difficult.
Mm,
It was very, very
mm.
difficult.
Well, yeah, and I thickened up my list just in case I had to go second. But I think I'm gonna have to go the Rioli goal on the stroke of halftime.
This could end up big win for Jones. Caught one in the mush. Get on with it, they say. The give and go from Wines. 9 seconds inside 50. Georgiades offhand. Rioli goal. With a second on the clock, Rioli's goal. Siren sounds.
The buzzer
We've
beater.
kind of mentioned it already,
Yeah,
a good passage of play leading up to it, really vital in the context of the game and just not stamping our authority, but yeah, just keeping that flow of our ascendancy going, keeping us in front, just making sure that we go into halftime with a break on them.
yeah, arms length
Because
a little bit. Yeah,
yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly, and just kind of quietened, dampened the fire a little bit that would have been brewing on the Hawthorn side of things after their fortuitous run of goals and them getting back into the game. Whether you like it or not, they did get back into the game, and yeah,
Mm.
that was a crucial moment for me. Yeah, with the passage of play, the chaotic nature of it, and a volley from Rioli, it
Yeah,
looks
yeah.
good.
It's geez, we get some Galazzos against the Hawks, don't we, this year? Like it's two of those, two buzzer beater goals, just like
Yeah, in
yeah,
different context.
incredible stuff. You know, it's funny just speaking of that because that goal happened and then the siren went. Both sirens, like the halftime and the full time, I didn't really hear. Like the full time one, just the noise and possibly the 10 beers I'd had at that point. Like that might have been a part of it too. But yeah, just the halftime with that buzzer beater from Willie, and then obviously the full time siren just being the chaos on the ground at that point. Yeah, I don't remember hearing either sirens. I know they went because I saw the crowd and saw the lights flashing, but yeah, incredible noise in the ground, which
Yeah, for
is
sure.
just great to be a part of. Alrighty, my goal of the week nominee, just for the vibes of it and giving him some plaudits for just every part of the game he brought to it. I just go Jace Burgoyne snap in the fourth quarter.
Rioli, the kick wasn't quite there. Burgoyne! 2 in a row, Port Adelaide!
So Burgoyne's got Ginnivan here. Ginnivan presses in. Burgoyne comes into the middle there, and he's on his own. So Ginnivan made the decision to try and get that extra number down. They didn't have any impact, and
just it lifted. It was one of those roof lifters, especially in that period of the game where we did get a little bit of ascendancy again. Unfortunately, of course, the Hawks did bring it back, but we still won, so it doesn't matter. Like a couple of goals he could have picked, like Jason Horne-Francis, Jace. Could have picked that one, but I thought Jace Burgoyne's was just a little bit more. Had to be a little bit quicker on it. Like Horne-Francis did have that time to turn and again, I guess giving a little bit of credence to Horne-Francis, he does do that a bit more. Burgoyne hasn't kicked too many this year. He's had a few opportunities, but he's missed.
No, he's missed a lot in actual fact.
So for him to pop up with that one just in such a crucial time, him getting lifted up in a hug by Boki and co, like just it was like young, young and old. Was it Boke? I feel like it was Boke, but now I'm questioning myself.
Yeah, it was Boki, and then I read Josh Sin, I think maybe had a little interview, and he said that he basically ran the length of the field because I think they live together, Josh Sin and Jace Burgoyne.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, when Burgoyne he ran the length of the field, and you could just see it on all their faces. Like Burgoyne was like, "Yeah, boys, we're on," and
yeah,
kind of a few people like, "I can't believe that just happened." Kind of essence about it, but just pure elation.
Yeah, and how good is it to see a Burgoyne with the number 7 on the back, just kicking goals in finals again?
Stop it!
Just vibes, vibes. So I had to go with that one.
Socks up, number 7.
Yeah,
Longish flowing hair.
Yeah, kind of similar, like it's
bit of length on it.
Yeah, very reminiscent of his old man in the 2004 run. Knock on wood. But yeah, it was an incredible goal. So, and yeah, like I said, there was a few. Darcy Byrne-Jones, both of his goals I could have picked in a different week, like especially his one running on the I think that was actually an incredible goal, that one he kicked from the wing, like on the 50-yard.
Me too.
Yeah, so
and it came from a Rioli no look handball as well.
Rioli had
to him.
God, Rioli had some kicks that defied gravity and physics and stuff like that in this game as well. So yeah, Rioli.
But yeah, when both Jaces kicked their goals and we pushed it out to a 3-goal margin, I was like, yeah, we're gonna kill them now. And I got out my chair and I was just like, crush him, kill him at the top of my lungs. And then unfortunately football happens and Hawthorn take a couple back and it becomes a tussle again.
Yeah.
But at that point in time, I don't think we'd be alone in saying like, I thought we were maybe going to go on with it. And credit to Hawthorn, they wrestled it back.
I think similar to the first quarter, if we just kicked, or the first quarter and a half, we just needed to get out to the 4-goal break rather than 3, like, because it just felt like, yeah, if we'd kicked another one in that period of time, because we got out to 3 goals, if it gotten out beyond 20 points, then it's that psychological thing. I think it's just the fact it was within 3 goals. It helped Hawthorn a little bit, excuse me. So yeah, but yeah, a great goal and a great man, and ultimately still quite crucial to our win. So all right, Sweeney's again. God, the list. It was so much more fun doing this week than last week. I've picked one. I didn't see this on the night, but I saw it in the in the replay. This is sorry, I'm not picking this one. I just wanted to honorable mention this one. Actually, no, I'm not going to do it because you might. I'm going to leave it until after you've made your pick. My Sweeney pick is the DBJ tackle on Impey late on in the game.
Had to be.
Yeah.
They go inside 50. Radicalier and Weddle. Weddle has a win. He slipped. Releases the handball. Hawthorn in control, or are they?
True got a hand in. Impey gone. Awesome tackling from Burne-Jones.
Had to be.
Yeah. I've got a note back in the at the end of the third quarter when DBJ kicks the goal that comes from the Mitch Georgiades innocuous header assist.
Smother. yeah.
DBJ is absolutely like he's on his hands on his knees. He's sucking in the deep ones. Like he is
He's like crouching down. I noticed that too.
Every ounce of oxygen he can take in that moment he's taking because he is absolutely just out of it. And that's
stuffed.
That's at the end of near the end of the third quarter. And then he's chasing down Jarman Impey, who's, obviously a former Port player, but what part of the real great run that Hawthorn has, like part of Hockball has been Jarman Impey this year. Like he's been a real key pillar of that. And so DBJ to kind of, whatever tiredness he was feeling clearly by that point of the game, he just gutsed it out and brought in and kind of bookended the game. The pressure that we started with was bookended with that. A really great Drew spoil in the lead up to that, but the Sweeney nomination does go to DBJ's tackle. And obviously they still do get an opportunity after that, but that did stop a possible goal scoring opportunity in that moment too.
It could have been a real open play for Hawthorn. And I could be really petty and say that my Sweeney is the Willem Drew spoil that led to it. But I'm not going to, because it all kind of is packaged in one. Two great efforts.
Mm-hmm.
And DBJ, I think, just as an aside, like I think a lot of people would feel vindicated. I know I did, and I would know you did with him going back forward. I mean, can't play a much better small forward role than that. Probably Willie Rioli's game would top that. But 2 goals impacting everywhere, forward pressure. Like it's just some of the decisions going to Geelong just seem mind-boggling at this point in time. But alas, we're still alive and we're here now. So where to go?
There's a lot of options this week. So
credit to Rioli's across the body.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I don't have it written down. I've got the one across the body to Todd, but he did it twice, didn't he?
He did one. Oh God, do I have it in my notes?
Was it to Georgiades?
Yeah, he did one across the body. I'm pretty sure he did one across the body. Yeah, I've got.
Fuck it. I'm gonna go something different because, I think it's pretty obvious who'll win. But so you mentioned the JHF goal.
Mm-hmm.
I think it might go unnoticed some, but he only gets that because of a splendid handball from Jordan Sweet in congestion.
Great handball. HORNE-FRANCIS. 3 in a row, Port Adelaide. The big man.
It's on the ground. It's at ground level, and for a guy pushing over 200 centimeters, he gets down and dirty and just the perfect handball, to get it to the player that you want through traffic. And it was a goal assist. So I'm going to go Sweet's hand pass in congestion.
Yeah, no, I love that. I noticed that on the night too. I thought, sorry, not on the night, but when I watched the replay yesterday, I was just I did pick up on that when I was watching, and I was just like, oh, geez, that's good. And Sweet had it'll come up in a little bit, so I'm not going to go too much into it. But he had some really nice stats on the night too. But he's shown this year that he's got such a propensity for doing much more than a typical big lanky ruckman that you would think can do. Like he's a a modern
Oh
modern ruck.
yeah,
He's a modern ruckman in many respects in that sense. Like he's just
yeah, yeah. Josh
yeah.
Carr was on the Saturday Sports Show with Hornsey and KG,
Mhm.
and they asked him, they asked Josh Carr about Jordan Sweet, and obviously oblivious to the fact that Kari coached him at North Adelaide,
Mhm.
but he brought it up, and yeah, he just mentioned how that Sweet now in the form that he's built himself into, he adds another layer to the midfield as a whole, not just as a ruckman, but as another midfielder. And yeah, I mean, you don't have to convince us about that. Like, yeah, it's pretty obvious. And like you
Mhm.
said, the stats kind of, yeah, that he racked up, and in many, many games, particularly in the second half of the year, once he's staked his claim on the role, yeah, just fantastic.
Yeah.
A bit cheeky. Well, actually, all three of mine were all goal assists. So I was going to say a bit cheeky because it's involved in a goal. Well, oh, sorry. And the other thing before we move on, I was going to say is
Mhm.
that because the Lockie Jones tackle got called a free kick against, like, that's probably a Sweeney, really.
Yeah,
Like, it might, like, the
I think I had
attitude
it.
of it all, like, that's the spirit of the Sweeney. But like, he's given up a free kick, which no one
Yeah.
agrees with.
Yeah, but
Um,
it's just like it can't be in there, but you want it to be in there. um
But just on a editing point of view, and like it's got enough commentary to like, because yeah, even the commentators are like, yeah, it's a goal saving tackle,
mhm.
and then like you could cut it there before they go, oh no, it's a free kick against. Anyway,
Yeah.
I guess that's an honorable mention because it's a fantastic tackle, but
It was the essence of it. Yeah, I
yeah,
even have it written down, and then I was just like Sweeney, but no. Um, the one that I was gonna is I don't know if you've picked it up in your replays. There's at about 4 minutes into the game, I think it's a ball like a throw in, a ball in, like stoppage, and I don't know how it comes to Sweet. I only watched it back once, and I just noticed. But Sweet does a like little scorpion, like it like comes out the back of him, and he just flicks up the back of his ankle of his boot to kick it backwards.
really,
It's like a
no,
real
don't
like
think
little
I've
scorpion.
noticed that.
When I'm going through and clipping stuff, I'll just find that because I've got it in my notes. Because I
I'd really
almost
love to see him go full scorpion. That'd be a
yeah.
sight to behold.
Oh yeah. Yeah, geez,
Just limbs everywhere.
if he can just be like, 10 meters out in a stoppage and just scorpion it in, that would be wonderful. That would almost win goal of
That
the
would
year,
bring
I
the
think.
house down.
Yeah, but yeah, he did a little, and it shows his kind of his involved, like just how locked in he is. He looked, I must have looked over his back of his shoulder and saw the ball and just flicked up the back of his foot, and didn't end up in anything major, but did get the ball moving out of the stoppage. So, yeah, I thought it
Yeah,
was really really cool to
just a
see.
cool
So.
tidbit.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't want to pick it because there was so many more really good ones in the game as we've just both picked. But yeah, I thought I had to mention that one. If anyone else did see it, then they know what I'm talking about. But yeah, all right. The Player of the Year votes, which is a tough one to knuckle down, but you get to go first in this one. And I'm looking forward to seeing where you went with it.
Yeah, so obviously I don't know who you voted for, but I still want to do honorable mentions just
Mhm.
in case. And because I feel bad for not getting them in the votes. So I'm not going to spend too much time on them, but
Mhm.
Mitch Georgiadis gets an honorable mention because he played his role as well as he fucking could, having 5 shots on goal and kicking 3 goals.
Mhm.
Yeah, fantastic effort. Looked like a forward, assured in his own game, made great leads, safe hands. And then the other one is Ollie Wines doing a lot of dirty stuff, a lot of hard stuff. Uh, Disposal let him down as a whole, which look, I'm not going to sit on that for too long. Like we both agree that when you're doing the real dirty work, sometimes your disposal efficiency can go down, but as a whole, you're still bringing a lot. And he did do a lot, and yeah, so those are my honorable mentions. My one vote goes to Willem Drew.
Mhm.
So the reason that I've given him a vote uh, is because he had 18 disposals, 13 of which were contested on the night, 292 meters gained. He had 6 scoring involvements, which I think is equal best. Equal third um, for Port Adelaide. 6 clearances, 6 inside 50s, so 666, number of the beast. 8 tackles,
He is a
23
redhead.
pressure acts. Yeah. So yeah, real Willem Drew stuff. 23 pressure
Yeah.
acts, 13 in the defensive half because you you bet that I added that stat line after your
Yeah.
recent spotlights on those stats in particular, and 3 1%ers. But so with all that being said, and those are fantastic in their own right, but this is the funny thing about us being just couch potato, podcast hosts and whatnot, is that when we go, oh, who's Willem Drew going to do a job on? You just automatically think the best inside mid or someone of the like. But for 3 quarters, he actually had the tag on D'Ambrosio on a wing. He was obviously pushed out a little bit because they were giving JHF, they gave JHF a start. We haven't actually touched on that, but
Yeah.
they kind of buckled to a little bit of outside pressure. And it meant that Drew spent more time on the wing.
Mhm.
But yeah, he blanketed D'Ambrosio, who's been a source of a lot of score involvements and forward forays for Hawthorn across the season, and kept him to a fairly minimal game in context of his season. And then, yeah, like we touched on earlier, in the fourth quarter, they made a call for Drew to go on Jai Newcomb, and the mongrel punt actually, they love Willem Drew. And so I've read their article, and they touched on the fact that if you just look at Newcomb's last quarter, he had 7 disposals, and if you leave it at that, you're probably going, okay, tag didn't work, but only 2 of those disposals were effective.
Mhm.
So then you go, all right, that's perfect, because five
If you
out
can
of
take
7, yeah,
you can take their leading guy out and only have him have 2 effective disposals in what was a really hot last quarter, and that's a
yeah,
win. So yeah, no, a
yeah,
great pick
because
there.
I believe John Newcomb, was the leading disposal getter for the night
Mhm.
as a whole, and was the leading AFL player rate, champion data player rated player on the night. And so all of that would have been predicated on this first 3 quarters, and Drew, did the job on him in the last quarter. So again, we've spoken about the two-way tagger aspect of
Mhm.
it. Spent a lot of time on WD28 for a 1 vote game, but just wanted to
He
highlight
deserves it.
that his stats in his own right are good, but then when you take into the account the job that he did across the night on 2 players, just franks that a little bit. My 2 votes goes to Connor Rosie,
Mhm.
one of those players that had a amount of pressure heaped on him, very unfairly in some regards, and we've spoken about why we believe that. But I thought he set the tone early as the captain. He was fucking everywhere in the first quarter in particular.
Mhm.
But for the whole night, he had 20 disposals, 7 of which were contested. He used it at 85% disposal efficiency, so which is fucking humongous. 240 meters gained. He had 4 marks. He obviously kicked the goal to get us underway amidst a lot of opposition boos.
Yeah.
6 score involvements for him as well. He had, and then this is the thing: 9 tackles and 33 pressure acts,
Mhm.
12 of which were in the defensive half. So again, for all the people that want to say that he just does the flash stuff, you're absolutely and factually incorrect. More often than not, Connor Rosie is up there for our team in tackles and pressure acts. So
And he
if you
was
want to question his
last
effort,
week against Geelong, which was a bad game for
yeah,
everyone. But sorry to interject. I just wanted to point that out
no,
again,
go
that
for it.
he was right near the top of tackles and pressure acts last week against Geelong. So
Yeah.
the questions of him last week were not warranted, even though, yes, it was a bad game for everyone. He performed his role as best as he could in the situation. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, agree. My 3 votes goes to Jordan Sweet. Can't speak more highly of the game by a player who has played sub 20 games coming into the side this season,
It was
and
11
has probably
career
crossed the
games
20
until
mark
this year.
surely by now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, 52 hit outs, which we've spoken of, 10 to advantage, 15 disposals, 13 of those contested. So nearly all of
Mm-hmm.
his disposals were contested. He had the 1 goal assist, which was the JHF goal, which we spoke about before, included in his 7 score involvements, which is second best on ground. For Port, 6 clearances, 3 of those were from the center, which is up there for our side. 3 rebound 50s, 5 tackles, 24 pressure acts, and 4 1%ers. So just doing it everywhere, Jordan, and speaks to what we were just chatting about in terms of him adding to the midfield in more ways than just hit outs.
Yeah.
My 4 votes, I mean, it's getting pretty obvious at this point, goes to Willie Rioli. Just a scary good game by Rioli. And it was pretty much when the game was at its hottest, it was a bit of just get it to Willie kind of areas because
Hmm.
yeah, in the really heated moments of the game pressure wise, when some more illustrious players were kind of, you know, not quite getting it done, he still looked assured by hand or foot if it was in his hands. So yeah, 15 disposals, 5 of which were contested, 211 meters gained, which I'm pretty sure I saw for a half forward or a forward pocket. I think that was the same as Zerk Thatcher, just to draw it back on maybe a defensive comparison. So
Hmm.
he was working hard kind of both ways. 4 marks. He had the 2 goals, one, obviously. He had 3 goal assists.
Yeah.
So we've spoken briefly this season on goal involvements and yeah, eight score
And some
involvements as a whole.
wizardry in those goal assists as well. They
Yeah,
defied,
yeah,
yeah,
it's that magic. It's the
yeah,
Brioli magic that you love.
stuff
He
you've
had a
been
clearance
talking.
as well for shits and gigs, 3 tackles, 14 pressure acts, and 4 1%ers. So
Hmm.
needed him to lift, needed to well, we needed to get the ball in his area more than we did the week before, and we certainly did that. And he used it magnificently. Scare factor, I've said it a
Yeah.
number of times, and he's got that game breaking ability. Obviously, his last name's Rioli. He's been there and done that as well. He's
Hmm.
a premiership player for West Coast, so there's a
Seems
lot
to get
of
forgotten. Seems to get
knowledge and
forgotten a little bit sometimes, I
yeah,
think. Yeah.
yeah, definitely, yeah. Obviously for that period that he'd probably prefer to forget. Everything before that, yeah, just kind of gets forgotten, like you said. And it's yeah, pretty obvious who best on ground for me is Jace Burgoyne. You've seen everyone's seen all the stats: 25 disposals, 7 of which are contested, 76% disposal efficiency, nearly 300 meters gained, 9 marks, 2 of which were intercepts, a goal, 5 rebound 50s, and 5 spoils. So
Hmm.
just I'm not going to say coming of age game because I think he's had several of those, which I think Ken allude. I think Ken actually said that. But yeah, elevate it in a final, and he certainly did that.
Yeah, I was trying to think. We had was it St Kilda at home earlier this year? I think we both had it. Trying to think, it was. Sorry, excuse me. If it was that game or another one earlier in the year, we both had him as our best on field, and I think we kind of said that at the time too. So he's had a few of those, but being that it's in finals, it's yeah, elevated pressure, and he played with a maturity of beyond his years. Which um yeah, I'll get to my votes now, but we have 4 of the same player. There's one big change in mine, which is somewhat my bias because I love this kid, but I'll get to him in a second. My 1 vote goes to Jordan Sweet, which, again, won't go through the stats again. Same reasons as you. I would have loved to have him higher as well because, Champion Data had him as second best player on the field, which, again, I have my love-hate relationship with Champion Data, but it does show they do have a reason for how they measure things out. But yeah, love Sweety's game. My 2 votes, which I don't feel right putting him in my only 2, but Willie Rioli, again, the same reasons as you, just an incredible game. And I think considering the moment, possibly his best game for the club at this point. And he's had some good ones all year. Like we've both been lauding him all year. And I think we've also said it's no secret
We've looked
that
significantly better with him in the team.
yeah,
Like
that
it's
middle
as
period of the
simple
year
as that
that
for
we
me.
fell away a little bit. It's no secret. It's no coincidence that he was out of the side in that time with
He was
injury. So
out. Yeah.
yeah, and then coming back through the sandful as well. So yeah, my 3 votes, Connor Rosie, again, just captain's game. Big opening goal. As you said, the pressure acts, the tackles again. Only second only to Ollie Wines in tackles, which is just like you're never going to think of those 2 players as your leading tacklers. Your other vote, you Willem Drew, which was an honourable mention for me, by the way. Sorry, I couldn't get him in my votes. Alongside Brendan Zerk Thatcher, I had as an honourable as well. But yeah, Rosie, a captain's game. I was really pleased for him, considering the pressure that unwarranted pressure that he had come on him after the Geelong game as well. But that's what comes with having the number 1 in your back. There is a part of that it's just part of it. But he responded
Yeah.
as best as he could. 20 disposals at 85% efficiency is incredible in a game like that both teams only operated at 69%, and the fact that he was involved in so much of the pressure act stuff and the tackling stuff to still get your touches and operate at that efficiency, really, really, really good stuff.
Mhm.
My 4 votes was just a big change from a big difference to yours. I got Logan Evans in there. I thought he was I think there's a part of me
Yeah,
that
haven't spoken about him nearly enough.
there's a part of me that goes at his age, at
Yeah.
18, having come into the system only, he didn't have a preseason with us. I mean, he's been a train-on player before that, I think,
Yeah, he can't. Yeah.
um, but it's still just there's a big difference between being a part of game day operations and all that stuff. He had 22 disposals at 81%, 570 meters gain, which I think led the team. 6
Yeah.
1%ers led the team, 9 intercept possessions, which was tied with BZT for the leading the team. I think it is at his age and this hot contest of a game that it was. It's just like it's such an incredible performance. I genuinely, just my one note, I do not think we're playing in a preliminary final this year if he wasn't drafted mid-year. That's how big he has been for the structure and how much he's implemented. I just don't think that if you haven't had him come in and play the way he has, and some of the injuries that we've had in the last few weeks as well, especially. But that defensive structure rechange that we did, and Bergman's a part of that too, and just how we changed things. Logan Evans has been an integral part of that. So I genuinely don't think we're at this point of the season without him coming in, which is an incredible testament to him. There's a lot of players that you could say that about, but he's definitely a part of that. So, and yeah, obviously 5 votes, Jace Burgoyne. Yeah, he's at a coming of age game already, but geez, that's a Jace Burgoyne. There's a few people around because you get so insular about your team, sometimes you don't realize the players that are involved at other clubs. I'm sure there's a few neutrals that their team's not playing footy anymore this year that watched the game on
Yeah.
Friday night and went, holy shit, there's another Burgoyne. Because, yeah, because they would have seen that game and actually realized maybe they've heard that this Burgoyne kid's playing for Port, but they haven't watched a game yet this year. They watched that game and saw how well he played in such a high pressure moment and went, oh, fuck, there's another Burgoyne out there and he's playing really good footy.
Yeah, yeah.
And he's only 20, 21 years old or whatever he is. But yeah, incredible game from him. And he's featuring in that. He's been in the top 10 for most of the year since he came in. So he's getting himself another nice pair of votes, pair of best on ground votes from us to really cement himself in our top 10 for the player of the year.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Geez, we've gone 2 hours already, and we've got to get to reviewing the women and then quick preview on Sydney as well. So we won't spend too long on them. Unfortunately, that's not to say that the women mean any less. It's just that we were reviewing a big finals game, and we're reviewing a round 3 loss, unfortunately, for the Port Adelaide women this week, which I went down to Alberton for. It's quite tough for a few hours that morning because obviously the women played at 4:00 on Saturday afternoon. I went to bed about 2:00 on Saturday morning. So,
yeah, as did I.
yeah, yeah, and yeah, you had a busy night out. You went to the Gov afterwards, didn't you, for a show?
I did.
So,
yeah, it was fucking awesome. Yeah, but I was just so pumped. Yeah, I couldn't get to sleep.
Yeah, no, that's part of it too. I got myself to sleep just by the fact that I just drank away at the Peninsula Hotel, which is a great little spot to stay on the in Port Country if you're ever looking for a spot to stay that's a little bit cheaper, and it's literally 2 minutes to walk down to the fucking train from there as well, which is really good.
Nice.
But yeah. So Saturday afternoon, Port women, in what we previewed, we said it was going to be a real kind of litmus test for where we're at. Top eight battle, but they lost 4-5-29 to Freo's 5-7-37. Got themselves out to a couple of goal break, but twice in the game. It was a real game that, because of the wind across Alberton, which for those that weren't there, those that were there, well done, because you got through some quite windy conditions. It was a real east to west. Strong wind across Alberton, really cold wind as well. There's a couple of kicks that Freo had at the defensive zone in that first quarter that you could just. There was one I was standing where you kind of walk out of the Bob McLean bar between the precinct and the other stand. I was kind of standing right there where you and I stood for that first game actually.
Yeah,
it was one of those Freo kicks that they try to kick down the line, which is a kick that you 95% of the time you're executing. You could just see as soon as it left her foot, and she got some decent penetration on it, just floated straight to the out of bounds. That's how strong that wind was. So really, really tough conditions down there. But the girls did. It's one of those games. It was like we played 1.5 really good quarters. They played 2.5 good quarters, and that's kind of the difference. And in a tight game, low scoring game, 8 points. The first quarter we played really well, got a lot of forward 50 entries and a lot of just and the tackles inside 50 we had like 27 tackles inside 50 to their 12. So when we get it in there, we have really good pressure.
Yeah.
And some really
It's a
good.
bit of a story similar to the showdown also
Yes.
at Alberton.
Yes, exactly. So a lot of the kind of things that we're enjoying about this women's team so far, we saw a lot of that on the weekend. But you could see as soon as they turned for the second quarter, Freo and maybe Freo having the wind and Freo had the wind in the second quarter and crucially in the fourth quarter, and it was really just, and you could see we were a little bit gassed by the time the fourth quarter came around. Maybe it was a little bit mentally there that the prevailing wind was going towards the northern end. And we couldn't get a run at it in that fourth quarter, unfortunately, and that's kind of what changed it. And it's really the big difference is that Freo, so there was 9 goals scored in the game, 8 of them were scored to that northern end.
Yes,
Freo got 1 to the southern end in the third
the
quarter.
one goal, yeah,
and that kind of, it was an 8-point win, but that really was the one that broke the back. Once they scored that one, they got that one in the fourth quarter as well. So. A really tight game. A lot to love about it, but unfortunately, just still some of those things that Freo are a little bit as the game went on, they got a little bit cleaner and kind of figured out the conditions a bit more. We kind of had our run to start with and had some good opportunities, but just couldn't quite go on with the game and kind of figure out the game plan to get through the game and be able to counteract Freo counteracting our thrust forward in that first quarter. But yeah, how was it for you watching on the couch with possibly a little bit of a hangover? I was at the ground watching it with a hangover. I told you off air. I had 4 beers and each one went down like razor blades. I was still struggling.
Yeah. Hair of the dog didn't come into effect that time around. I was very tired. Had an afternoon nap prior to the game. But I think similar sentiments to the showdown as well in regards to link-up play, particularly out of stoppage and off half-back. It's contrasted because I thought that's what Freo did really well on the day, was they just seemed to have a player always wrapping around the back of their teammate who had the ball. And you mentioned that we seemingly got gassed, whether, mental, physical, or both, because of that wind and whatnot. But I think maybe we just got caught defending a little bit more than we would have liked across the whole game. Excuse me. So and we did well enough again. So in these 2 games that we've lost, we've done well enough to be there and thereabouts, and just some minor details have put a gap on us winning and the difference between winning and losing, unfortunately. And is it growth? I would probably say so. Obviously, looking at it a bit more intricately this season than last, but Freo got their ass handed to them by the Crows in round 2. Freo are one of the establishment clubs, like the initial group, because I think they actually got in before West Coast. Oh yeah, West Coast got in the same year we did, I believe, or maybe the year before.
It might have been. I think
someone correct me on that.
Yeah.
I know we played our first game against them.
My thing that I always say to some friends of mine, they go like, "Oh, you don't know much about AFLW before Port," and I was like, "Yeah, I didn't care about it before Port," and it's nothing against.
No, I didn't either.
Nothing against women's footy, but I'm not gonna.
Reminds me.
I didn't care about. I wasn't gonna watch. I wasn't gonna watch the people like, "Oh, we'll support the SA team." I'm like, well, the SA team is the Crows, and I hate them with every fiber of my being. So no.
I'm not gonna do that.
I was always like, yes, Port are going to come in, and that's when I'm going to invest myself in it. But like, it's kind of like AFL footy before Port. Like, I was passive. I mean, I was a kid, but I was passively, but I didn't really into it until Port came in. So
no, and that reminded me. I met up with some friends at the showdown couple weeks ago, and there's a friend of mine who I didn't recognize at first. It's been a while since I saw him, but he was wearing a Crows guernsey, and that was part of the reason why I didn't recognize him at first as well. But he's a Port Adelaide supporter in the men's competition, and I was like, "What's going on here? Like, what's this?" And he's like, "Well, Port didn't have a team, so I just started. yeah, and I wanted to support women's football. So just before I go on, okay, I'll give you that very minor detail.
Mm.
But then he's like, and then yeah, when Port came in, like Crows were coming off the back of a dynasty, and like you've got all these good players, and I'm like, you're sounding very fair weather to me right now,
Yeah.
and I want to leave this conversation because I don't like it. Because on top of that is like now that we're a full 18 team competition, I was like, well, what if they don't win anymore that now that it's a full competition with a lot of women who've come up through talent pathways, and it's not as easy as it was when like Crows were winning premierships. Like, what if
Yeah,
they don't? And what
it's a
what if Port start
dynasty.
winning?
Like, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know. Technically, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Adelaide Crows women's program has led the way in regards to the competition.
Mm.
I'll.
Yeah, no, we'll give them that credit. Yeah, they've been
I
a yeah.
I
Been
would say that it's probably harder to compete in nowadays, like because there's more competition. It's just
Mhm.
obvious. It's like that in the men's competition. Port Adelaide fans.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, I was just like, okay, I don't agree, but I'm not here to start any fights, so I'll leave it at that.
Green Beret.
Um,
Yeah.
great guy. Yeah, apart from that, and yeah, really funny guy, but yeah, interesting. And I'm sure he's not alone. Like, and it kind of, yeah, I couldn't think of anything worse than to wear a tricolours Guernsey, especially at Alberton. But
Mhm.
that's just me. Anyway, I digress. Um, yeah, you just reminded me of yeah, feelings towards the AFLW prior. Yeah, BP
Yeah, it's like
before Port.
when teams came in, unless they're like, because I know Hawthorn and Sydney came in when we did. I can't even remember who else did, but it's just like before that. Yeah, I saw that teams are winning, but I just I'm a Port Adelaide fan, so until they were in there,
Yeah, I was supportive of the competition, but
yeah,
not supportive of any club
yeah,
whatsoever.
exactly. And now that we're in, I'm watching every week and I'm loving it. And even though obviously our team is progressing and growing, and there's a clear pathway that we're looking to go, which is youth, which has got its benefits and its yeah. I mean, one of the big things again was just like our like crucial times when we could take a mark. Just we misread it. So there's a few times. Sometimes when the ball's coming into our forward 50 or deep into the 50 or like around the goal square area or around the goal face, a couple of times our forwards will contest with the back who's kind of leading up, but both like the defender has misread it and it ends up going over the back of both of them. Where I'm like, if you could read it a little bit better, you could probably contest and then drop off and take the mark, stuff like that. And
Yeah,
then
yeah,
some
that
mark
forward craft.
yeah, and then some marks coming out at like sometimes when we could take a pressure relieving mark coming outside of our defensive 50, just misreading the ball and letting it tunnel you instead, and then it just ends up coming back in. And those
Yeah,
are all
and I
things of
think
growth and yeah.
as a whole, Frio just on the eye test, we're a little cleaner.
They were, yeah. I think
Yeah,
disposal,
and disposal efficiency was 49% to 54.6
yeah.
on Frio's end. So
And crucially,
yeah, yeah,
efficiency inside 50 was 46 to 37 Frio's way as well. So just a few of those, and inside 50. I mean, which inside 50s swung heavily towards in that last quarter. But yeah, that efficiency inside 50 overall, and they just got their hands on the ball more as well. And in the end of the game, and that just pressure ultimately told. Our defensive
yeah.
system is holding up quite well at times. It's just you know when you
Yeah,
get
there's only
read
so
them,
much you can take.
yeah. Really
Well, and
loved. I
look,
mean,
like we lost by a goal and change. Like it wasn't
yeah,
a damning defeat. Yeah, we had our opportunities and yeah, just some of that link up play and like yeah, cleanliness, marking the ball. Um, yeah, let ourselves down on some occasions where it looked like we were in good positions to put some score on the board.
yeah. Shout out to Julia Teakle again, who I'm sure might come up in when we do our votes in a bit, but it will for me just to tease forward. But kicking a couple of goals, looking again, and this is something I'll just say to people listening: if you're not following the AFLW too much, it's really nice to get in and follow them as soon as you can, because for me, it's a real pleasure having watched Julia Teakle come in as in their first year versus now, just the growth in her as a player. So you get to,
Yeah,
that's what I'm really loving
absolutely.
about this third season, is just seeing the development of some of these players. And Teakle is one that really is shining as someone that you came in and had like the raw body, and you could see that there's a football player there, but tentative in kicking, tentative in a lot of her little touches and stuff in the first year. Now she's just playing with this brimming confidence where it just doesn't. If the ball comes to her within 40 meters, she's having a shot at goal, and she kicked two really nice ones, but one from about 35 on a snap around the body. One was a real crumbing goal, about 10 meters out from goal, like two very different goals. And then she's kicked set shots this year, and I think she's leading goal scorer in the AFLW at the moment too.
Yeah,
as
she's
well.
equal leading, I believe, as a
Equal.
North Melbourne player.
Yeah, because she was leading, but then North Melbourne played later, and we play them next week, which might be a real litmus test for us.
Ooh, that's a task.
Yeah, I'll touch on after. But yeah, she's and then she got put back. I wonder if it was maybe a little bit too early, because she was an outlet as well, because one of the growth parts of Teakle's game has been her ability to move up to like half forward and into the square and be quite an athletic player as a linking player. Same with Gemma and Ashley Saint. They're all kind of playing a real athletic forward kind of thing and moving up the field a bit. When we threw Teakle back, and she took some really nice defensive marks in the game.
Yeah, Lauren Arnell touched on that in the press conference after the game.
It was like cutting off your hand to spite. If I understood why they did it, because the pressure was on. They're like, well, we've got a 1 point lead, maybe we should try to hold it. But it was like, you're probably not going to hold that 1 point lead. So it was unfortunate to have to do that. But I like the fact that we've got a little bit more of a handle on our squad, and
in all honesty, like leaving Saint and Houghton up forward should be enough.
Yes, you're
as well
100% correct, because they're both all Australian forwards, athletic forwards that can move up the field and do the same thing. So, and Teagle applied herself incredibly back there, and I thought it was going to work for a bit, but unfortunately that pressure. Unfortunately, it wasn't actually even that. It was just the fact we couldn't get past the half back line, unfortunately, just with our disposal efficiency going out the back line that last quarter. But made me think of when we were talking about Willem Drew a few weeks back, when we were like, we all dream of a team of Willem Drews. I was like, we all dream of a team of Julia Teakles. Like, and then I think I put it out on Twitter. Actually, I did the like soccer chant thing. Like, she's here, she's there, she's every fucking where. Julia Teakle, like, she's just that's
she backs her strength in too. She takes players on, which shows an increased confidence in her own game. Which I like.
I'm loving what she's doing, and long may it continue, because she could have she's on pace for an All-Australian season so far, and there's no reason to think it would stop for her. But it was really heartwarming, but also heartbreaking to see Janelle Cuthbertson, only a couple of days after her knee surgery, was getting out there on the crutches, out to the quarter-time huddles and all that stuff. Really sad to see, because she's struggling along, having just had an ACL reconstruction 2 days ago, I think.
It really annoys me. Sorry to cut in, but
go for it.
Obviously players get injuries, and this is across the competition I'm talking about, in the first round, second round, third round, and like the reporting off the back of it is they're ruled out for the season, and that pisses me off because their season is so short. Like Cuthbertson, even if it was a full length like it is in the men's competition, she wouldn't be coming back anyway. But I think I can't remember who the journalist was. They made the point to say that like injuries tend to happen at the start of the season.
Yeah,
I think it was Marnie
Vinyl. Yeah,
Vinyl. Sorry.
She's fantastic, by the way. She does.
I think, she made the point that injuries, even in the men's competition, are heavily weighted more to the start of the season. But once you get through that and you get your match conditioning across the men's competition, that the frequency of injuries and serious injuries tend to diminish. And I just can't help but thinking about some of these players across the competition. If it was longer than 10 fucking weeks, like they'd have a chance to come back and make an impact, and then their clubs would be like, I feel you don't get a good, like, I know the talent levels are different and whatnot, but little bit. Having that run.
I think it's like, imagine if Julia Teakle were just going back, because It's a Julia Teakle fancast now. If she'd had a full season in her first season of like, even if it's just playing everyone once, like 18 games or whatever, we don't even have to get out to 24. Just how much better that is for, because these players are only playing 10 games per year. I mean, I know they play a little bit of sandful or waffle or whatever they want in there, so they do get some game time in there, but their development in the AFL program is stunted by the fact that it's 10 weeks instead of 18. I just want to get to playing everyone once. I think that's the AFLW is actually built to do that, because the AFL men's is so...
Yeah, you're not beholden to an old system.
Yeah, exactly.
Just starting fresh.
Yeah, and Marnie made the point as well, because I think this is not injury, but there was a player, and I don't know who it was from what club, but she put out a tweet about a player that got suspended for 3 weeks.
Oh, and the percentages.
And we've talked
about the season.
We've talked about this as well, but she made the point that she's missing like essentially, a third of the season for something that, if you're gonna, you need to probably extrapolate that back for women's and say, if this is a 3-weeker in men's, it should be, I don't know how you do it, but it should, like they shouldn't have to miss almost a third of the season for something that the men don't miss that much time for. And the women's game is still developing as well, so you've got to be a little bit more cognizant to that. Although it is developing quickly, and people should respect that too, because the game I'm watching now is far better than it was 3 years ago, and I'm sure people that watched it before can see that as well. But yeah, it's, whether it be injuries, because I think Gemma in her first year for us got injured in the third or fourth week, and it wasn't an ace. It was one of those injuries that if we were playing a full women's
if the season was longer, it was just sitting. I was waiting. I think she would have been. I was going to bring it up.
Yeah, I think she would have been back about week 11 or 12 maybe, if possibly, or I don't know what it was exactly, but it didn't seem like it was a season ender unless we were only playing 10 games. So yeah,
well, and I think the AFL is obviously scared. There is the detractors' argument that I think the AFLW might be costing the league, but at the end of the day, the AFL is a not-for-profit organisation, so what's best for footy? I do think that my opinion is that the AFL
money as well, so fuck them.
They get their money.
Yeah,
we all know they get their money, and like my opinion is that they have the ability to blend the women's season more into the winter period, and while the men's season is going, my idea, just on like we're going off on a bit of a tangent here, but so Port Adelaide is playing an away game in the men's competition. There's no reason why our women's team can't be playing at Alberton that week.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
If I can be going to seeing Port Adelaide AFL footy every weekend, I am.
Well, and on top of that, there's people that like AFLW that don't actually like the men's competition.
Yeah.
That's obviously a small contingent in the context, but yeah. But you're right. Like if you've got the opportunity to support your club every week, it's not interfering on what ground are they going to play at or anything like that. Because I mean, our women's sides in this state don't use Adelaide Oval anyway. But yeah, it gives that opportunity for the Adelaide Crows fans to go to their men's home game, but it also gives us a chance to go see Port, and it doesn't. Yeah, that seems logical to me. I'm obviously not an executive for a national sporting organisation, but I do think if the AFL wanted to show a bit more guts, that's one way that they could do it. And then you could potentially start it in the mid-season bye rather than the pre-finals bye.
Yeah, absolutely. And you still get the men, not that they should have to, we should be kowtowing to the men's competition, but you still give them their, month or two to get their season underway, and then you get the women's season underway in between, and then they still probably
the men's, it's the elite competition of the sport. Like you're not comparing apples with apples. Like the AFL, the men's competition for me it's the elite of the elite. Like it's at 160 years of development. Like that's the best brand of football that you can watch. Like I'm aware of that, and I that's my point of view. But it doesn't mean that you can't. I wouldn't even say gamble on the women's competition. Just breathe more life into it and show a bit of guts by crossing over to a higher degree than it already is.
Yeah, and I mean, as we've said, as we get into it, and I guess we'll get to our votes in a second, the more support you put into the women's competition, and the more that we start seeing these women that come through that have actually had, a decade of development pathway into the AFL competition now. We're seeing a lot of players that we love to go and watch play footy. So you just need to give them the space and the breathing space to become professional footballers, and you're going to see some results. And I guess that's probably a good unless you have anything more from the game. I don't really.
Nah, look,
Yeah, we want to.
Yeah.
We need to.
We're getting a bit long in the tooth, and
Yeah.
there's not really much to say. It's an opportunity missed, but one hopefully that they all learn from.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we'll get into the votes. I'll go first this week because I think you went first last week. So my one vote, which I'm really glad to get her in here, and this is like two over the 3 weeks now that our young rising star nominee has gotten into my votes. But Shenanigans Goody didn't get on the scoreboard. She had a couple of nice shots on. Geez, her kicks are just she's so professional in her kicking. Like she's just as I was talking about players that are coming in now, having had maybe half of their lives having watched AFLW almost. You can see that development pathway and just how much more developed they are at 18. That she is just this real booming kick for such a young player. She gets had 14 disposals, 9 of them contested. 5 marks. Her marking ability, considering we're talking about some of players that are still struggling with the marking ability, hers is far advanced compared to some of her other players that might be a couple of years older than her. Just her marking ability, her kicking ability, and just certainly getting involved in the game, the contest, tackles, 5 tackles. Unfortunately, just missed one. She had a couple of shots. Just had a really nice booming shot from almost 50. It felt like almost 50, I think. Missed it, but didn't miss by much. And just loving her game and what she's already bringing 3 games into her AFLW career. My 2 votes, Abby Dowrick. Probably just going to pop up a lot, but we've clearly fans of her on this one. Again, she didn't quite get on the scoreboard, but 15 touches, 6 contested. She's one of those, and just again, the conditions were tough, so it was hard to find real standouts. But I thought she had a really, really, really nice game, and is continuing her development quite well now in her 3rd year for us. My 3 votes, I said she was going to come up, Julia Teakle. We all dream of a team of Julia Teakles. She, again, getting on the scoreboard with a couple of goals, a couple of really nice goals. Like if you put those goals into our AFL Men's Goal of the Week competition, she might have been in the discussion this week, despite the fact that we had some really nice ones because her goals were absolute class. Taken a lot of, she took 3 marks, obviously down actually mostly in the defensive end, ironically, because both of her goals came from snaps and general play. But
general play,
her booming kicks forward as well. Like when she's getting the ball like on the half forward flank, like she's getting really good penetration on her kicks. Like again, the development of her as a player since a couple of years ago is incredible. And she gets involved in the pressure game as well with a few tackles, contested possessions. 6 of her possessions were contested. So really loving her game, and long may she continue making her way into my votes. My 4 and 5 were really hard to split, but I've gone to Maria Maloney with my 4 votes. She was our leading disposal getter with 17 on the day, with 9 of them contested. 5 tackles. Just one of those players that just, for me, watching the game, at the game, I noticed her all day. I actually went into my votes thinking she was going to edge it, but I also, as I segue into my 5 votes, which was Kirsty Lamb, which is really nice to see her growing exponentially, because I thought she was a bit quiet in the showdown, but just finding her footing. But I think she's just growing exponentially week to week now. My 5 votes, Kirsty Lamb, 16 disposals, just shaded by Maria Maloney's disposal numbers, but she had almost 400 meters gained in a game that was, it was quite tough as the game wore on for us to get any meters gained in it as well. So she had a really good game as far as driving the ball forward from a kind of half forward position. But 12 contested possessions in that 16. She was the one that, alongside Maloney, it was just like, it felt like while I was at the game watching with my incredible semi-final hangover, I was just like seeing Maloney and Lamb all day. It was a Maria and Kirsty show. So had to split them somehow. And I just thought, I think it came down to the fact that I was just like, just the amount of meters gained she had, and contested game, she had equal high. She was tied with Dowrick for second most tackles with 7. It was Piper Window and Emily Borg and Caitlin Wendland, which, by the way, Caitlin Wendland, a really nice debut goal for us and our first AFLW
Yeah.
goal in general. And shout out to Piper Window as well, who was another one. There's a lot of honourable mentions I could pop in there. Like I thought Tegan Gurmich missed a mark that she should have taken, but she took some really nice marks. She some nice contested marks as well. So a lot of little performances in there. And Piper Window again, she's growing every game. But yeah, Kirsty. Sorry, that I tangented there for a second because I was just looking at tackle numbers. But yeah, Kirsty Lamb's my 5 votes and best on ground for me. And I'll let you take it away.
Nice. Um, I would like to give an honorable mention to Juzzy Mules Robinson. I just I've actually only watched the game once. I haven't been able to fit in a rewatch of this game, but from my memories of the game, I just felt like she was in and around the ball a lot more often than the first couple of games that we've played, and was trying to will us forward as often as she could. Like she was getting up the ground a little bit, obviously starting down forward on the sheet. But yeah, I thought as a senior player, she was putting in a bit of a concerted effort in comparison to the first 2 weeks. So good on her.
And she's captain now, by the way, as well.
Oh, right, of course. So maybe,
Yeah.
a bit of extra fuel for her to stamp her authority a little bit. She ends up, well, relatively mid-pack, top just above mid-pack in terms of statistics. My 1 vote goes to Matilda Schultz. She had 24 hitouts, 13 disposals, 8 of which were contested. 230 meters gain, roughly 2 marks, 2 scoring involvements, 2 clearances, 3 inside 50s and 4 rebound 50s. Probably more sums it up for me. Obviously, she's a ruck person, rather than a ruck man. Yeah, so obviously she's working around the ground a lot. I just think she's building into the season a little bit, and while she's still yet to kind of reach the upper echelon in terms of her capabilities. I thought, she was just impacting a lot of contests around the ground. And yeah, I thought it was clearly her best game so far out of the first 3, because it's the first time I felt warranted to give her votes. And I am cognizant to the fact of my bias in her regard. 2 votes goes to Abby Dowrick. Yeah, for all the same things that you mentioned before. She had the 5 clearances, 7 tackles, which I think you've mentioned, 3 of which were inside 50. Those are tackles, that is. My 3 votes goes to Maria Maloney. Again, for all the reasons that you said, she's had a good couple of weeks now, and I think I mentioned last week that she was probably a bit unlucky to miss out on my votes in the showdown. But yeah, she's just getting the work done. She's getting the dirty work done. You've mentioned all her stats, so don't need to spend too much time on that. My 4 votes goes to Julia Teakle, playing your role, but also 11 of her disposals, 6 were contested, but she went at 81.8%. So again, put her head above a lot of other people, and by a fair margin in regards to how she was using it by foot and hand in that regard. 3 marks, like you said. Yeah, she spent a bit of time down back. 4 tackles, 2 of which were inside 50s, and also had 3 1%ers. Again, she got the 10, not 10 coaches votes. She got the most coaches votes for us. She got nowhere near 10. There was 3 Freo players who topped the charts there. But so Lauren Arnell must be doing her coaches votes in relation to the roles perhaps given on the day. Because, and in that regard, Teakle's doing really well, and that's why she's up there in the votes again. My 5 votes goes to Kirsty Lamb at this point. Nearly all of her disposals contested, like you said, 400 meters gain, 8 clearance, 4 from the center as well, 3 rebound 50s and 7 tackles. Building into our system. A lot as the weeks go by. She started off a bit slow in the showdown, and then against the Bulldogs, her old side, she had those couple of goals and she was a bit more prevalent. And then, in this game in particular, she's using her attributes to best effect.
Yeah, it feels like she's really getting a handle on her system quite quickly, which is nice, and yeah, getting a handle and actually working into it quite well. So yeah, really glad to see that because she's a high profile recruit, which we had no doubt she'd be good for us. But it's nice to see that growth happening quite quickly, actually, I think, which is nice. And she's obviously gotten both of our best on ground for what was, while it was a loss, it was a very close game and one that there was still some signs to what we can look forward to in the future. Just to touch on before we get to previewing our preliminary final quickly here before we close off. Port Adelaide goes to North Melbourne at Mission Whitten Oval is what it's listed as. North Melbourne, who are 2 wins, 1 draw, and 0 losses on the season. They smashed the reigning premiers Brisbane in the opening game of the season. Drew to Geelong, I think down in Geelong in the second week, and then had a pretty handy win of, I think it was like 30 to 40 points over Melbourne just last weekend. So they haven't lost, and the couple of wins they've had have been quite large, including, again, beating the reigning premiers in the flag raising game for Brisbane in the opening round. So Kangaroos and the betting odds don't make for good reading. Kangaroos are $1.04, we're $10. So look, don't go in expecting a win because clearly the bookies aren't. And it's two teams in very different places. Kangaroos are really pushing towards their
Yeah,
genuine flag contender.
yeah,
We're just trying to see if we can make a run at the 8, and we're not
yeah.
even sure if
We got to go there with a goal in mind and put our
yeah,
best effort,
have a crack,
put our best foot forward. Yeah,
leave no stone unturned, have a crack and see where it leaves you. If it leaves you in a 40-point loss, and that's just where you're at the moment. But if you end up making it a battle for them, then geez, that's a who knows? Could be a miracle. You know, as we said at the top of the show, talking about the Hawthorn game, turn up, you never know what's going to happen. So yeah, it's long odds, but yeah, a really good test for the girls going away. Just to touch on it now, and then we'll go into the Sydney preview. I think they're showing the games, both games live at Alberton this week. Obviously, there's a big screen on the side of the new facilities down there. The women's game starts at 4:30 on Friday afternoon, and then obviously the men's preliminary final against Sydney happens right after that. So good day to get down to Alberton if you have the ability to and would like to watch down there with the fellow true believers, faithful, whatever you want to call them. True believers has some people not like that for some reason, but I don't mind it. But yeah, speaking of which, obviously, bad fumbly segue, but we're 2 hours and 2.5 hours into the podcast, so I'm running on fumes, people. We have a massive preliminary final this weekend, Friday night, 7:10 p.m. local time here in Adelaide, obviously 7:40 p.m. on the East Coast. It's first versus second on the ladder in the preliminary final. Sydney at the SCG, our Port Adelaide boys going up there. Odds are interesting, $1.31 versus 3.46, so it's clearly the money's. I took these earlier today, so whether the money's changed, I don't think it probably would have changed too much today, though. So clearly the money all for Sydney early, and makes sense. I guess it's the Sydney home game, but I was a little bit surprised to see that we're out in the $3 range, though, to be fair.
yeah. I know. No one's given us a chance from that point of view.
Which they didn't give us a chance last week either, and that worked out all right for us. So, look, just looking at briefly, just I always like, I don't know if people get anything out of this, but I always like touching on what the weather forecast is looking like. Really sunny and warm in Sydney, which could change in the next couple of days. But the forecast is 27 on Thursday, 24 on Friday, and 25 on Saturday. So, and mostly sunny. So, just looking at that as a 3-day range, you look at Friday right in the middle of that and go, geez, it's probably going to be some pretty reasonable dry conditions on the SCG for the game. So, no excuses for fumbly footy.
Being Sydney, it might get a little greasy.
Yeah.
If it's been a clear day, but yeah.
Yeah, they get that kind of
not much more you can ask for.
Yeah, this time of year, it's just like, yeah, you've played in far worse conditions. Sydney don't have too many injury concerns to speak of either. Obviously, Papley, probably one of the big ones that's come in since we last played them. Tom Papley's back in the side, as evidenced by the little fracas in the GWS Sydney qualifying final there. So he's well and truly back, and yeah, they're at reasonably full strength, more or less. They've got a couple of guys that are out for the season, but they've been out for a while. So, yeah, not much more to say on that. I guess probably the big question for us is what we're doing. Obviously, Todd Marshall's out. People were already questioning Charlie Dixon's place in the side. I think the forward line is probably the main area
That's
of
what I want to check.
yeah, probably the main area of concern for us going into this game. Just with, I mean, whether Burton becomes available, there's people have talked about Kane Farrell's possibly. I just don't. I just don't.
It's very interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know if anything's come out about that tonight. I don't think they would have, because usually that comes out on Tuesday when we used to record, and we're obviously recording this on a Monday evening.
I think he's got a lot of running ahead of him for the next few days, Kane Farrell. Because
Yeah,
I saw vision today of the session that they did today, I believe, and he seemed to be jogging fairly ably. And yeah, so
and I guess it would be
if Kane Farrell gets picked on Thursday, it'll be a huge surprise, and he'd want to tick off all the boxes that you could possibly tick, more so than Connor Rosie halfway through the season.
yeah.
Yeah, but it's an interesting story.
It is interesting because we forget. I mean, we've played the 2 games, but then we had the pre-finals bye. So it's actually,
Yeah.
if he does come back to play on Friday, it would have been almost 4 weeks since the injury, which on a light hamstring strain, that does happen. So I'm a little bit tentative with it. Well, I'm just one spit and twice shy, I guess, because of what we dealt with earlier in the season with Rosie, and just even touching back to what we talked about with Todd Marshall earlier. It's really fraught with danger to be picking a player that, you know, could, unless you
could go out in the first quarter.
You don't want to even be like 100% sure. You want to be 120% sure this guy is completely here. And so, and then you look at how we played last week. I don't know if Ryan Burton's availability is a possibility this week as well. The only main change you're going to be made, like Todd Marshall's out of the side, maybe Francis Evans, as we talked about earlier, just as far as that last 22 player. So if Charlie Dixon's fit, I guess you assume he comes back in, although some people would bringing up maybe if Soldo hasn't packed. I saw some Twitter conversations, can't remember who's through, but the alternatives to Marshall and Dixon were like, oh, well, do you bring Soldo in and play him out forward? And then I think it may have been the same guy or someone else replied, like, is he even still at the club? Like, no one knows. And then it was like, well, then you bring in Dante Vicentini. Dixon, he didn't have a great game against Geelong, obviously, but we've talked about him being reasonable in the stretch run since he came back from injury, and that Geelong game was just not good for anyone. So I don't know how much to take out of that for Dixon. Obviously, he went out with illness on the weekend, and not sure exactly what was happening there. Because
I think he was actually really crook from what I hear.
I haven't actually read anything because I was hungover.
Yeah, I heard that Chad Corns put him through his paces pre-game, like everyone's spoken about, and then it was that hard that he ended up in a coughing fit, and yeah, was on his haunches even. And look, Geelong got that matchup really right. Like they've got an steeplechase runner in Blixarves to go up against Dixon. And to be fair, and I think I mentioned it in our review of that game, like Dixon had 3 or 4 chances to be hit up in space or on a slight lead that we just squandered, which could have leveled that matchup a little bit more, when you look at it. Like Blixarves clearly won it. And even if Dixon might have kicked a couple of goals, you would still probably say that Blixarves won it. But it was a bad day. It was a bad matchup. And we made it look worse for him by not kicking it to him properly. But it's also important to note that he kicked 3 goals against Sydney the last time we played them. Now, how much you want to take out of that last game, because it's just one of those games that are a clear aberration on the season. We would definitely hope it has a second coming. But he did the job in conjunction with some other forwards like Georgiadis and Rioli in that game. But Yeah, he actually played a great game around the ground. I think I put him in my votes in that Sydney game, especially because of his groundwork. So look, he's got to get through some illness, which I think is lingering.
Hmm.
Um, but at the end of the day, we're coming up against Melican and McCartan as their two tools, and then they have their smalls around them. So if you've got Georgiadis um, and Radicalia, sorry,
Yeah.
like, if Dixon isn't fit, do you go a smaller forward line? Again, we talk about ground balls. This kind of stuff I'm repeating that professionals have spoken about already. Like apparently, yeah, ground ball is king. We've seen what Rioli can do with the ball on the ground and bring his teammates. Georgiadis is in great form. Radicalia is providing a genuine contest. I still like him to take some more marks
Hmm.
in his own right, but I don't know what he's specifically been told, what positions he's been told to put himself in that regard. We need a backup ruckman. I don't want to see Ollie Wines in that role, particularly against Grundy. So
Hmm.
I think Radigalia can do the job. But yeah, that the Dixon watch will definitely be on. I'm not going to have any issues if Marshall goes out and Dixon comes in. Because yeah, I know what we know what he can do if
Hmm.
it's his day. And yeah,
He'd
um,
be if he's fit, he'd be fired up for it too. Which yeah, goes
we'll
he
just yeah, you just need to
he.
park him in the goal square and win clearance and yeah, things that we didn't do against Geelong will
Yeah,
benefit him if we do them in the positive uh, to our end.
yeah. Which I
So
mean,
then the other, yeah,
I was just gonna say, speaking to just winning the ball in the engine room, like Sydney was a team that for three and a bit quarters against GWS were on the canvas, and just GWS couldn't quite hit the knockout blow, so to speak.
it's a
So,
good point you raise.
and I'm not underestimating Sydney by any means. It's just actually speaking facts. It's just like, I mean, when we played them only 5-6 weeks ago now, we smashed them by 100 points. That means nothing now. But I'm just their form line, even going through, and look, great comeback against GWS, but yeah,
They're still
GWS just
starting slow.
yeah, and so if we can get out on a jump on them, and we've got a good record against them, whatever you need to use to get yourself up for it, and just go go
Yeah.
go go.
And I
Like,
mean, even in that game, we lost hitouts, funnily enough, with Jordan Sweet's form at the moment. I
Mhm.
mean, yeah, Jordan Sweet had a down game against Geelong as well. So funny though, but we smashed them in clearance, and it was mainly around the ground stoppages. It was fairly level in centre clearances the last time we played them.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, there's some signs there to say like that it's not as imbalanced as what the bookies would suggest. We've got a great opportunity here to make a fucking
Mhm.
grand final. Like again, we're not playing for percentage anymore. You just have to win the game.
Yeah, yeah. You don't need to
Like,
win by 100 points. You just have to be over the
no,
line at the end of the
just get
day.
your fucking get your nose in front of the line and
I prefer
look.
it to be comfortable, but
Oh shit, yeah. Oh, my heart's going to be beating through my chest.
Mhm.
But the other thing with Sydney, and it was probably a bit of my confidence going into that game that we inevitably won by 100 points, was that their um, their midfield is built on a lot of youth. Sure,
Mhm.
they've got Isaac Heaney and they've got that some senior players around them. Um, but their vibrancy comes through youth as well, much like us and much like Hawthorn beforehand. So a similar sentiment with coming up against Hawthorn. I thought they were gettable because their youth may bring inconsistency. Now they've had the week off. How does that favour them in this day and age with the pre-finals bye? I think it's a bit more up in the air than what it used to be. I think statistics would show that. But in saying that, we just had our good game with our youth.
Mhm.
Do we kind of protect that inconsistency by, you know, hopefully Kane Farrell pulls a rabbit out of the hat and then adds a bit more seniority around the group? Um, I'm kind of wary of us in that regard. Like seeing Lockie Jones, Logan Evans, all those young players had great games. I just am wary and I'm hopeful that they continue, but there is that fragment of doubt that, perhaps they can have a dip. But in saying that, you would hope that the team as a whole covers that because, like I said, Aaliyah had moments that he'd probably prefer to get back. Some other players would probably have a bit more in the tank that they could give if some of those younger players have down games. So, but
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, yeah,
all
you
things
go.
being, I was just going to say, all things being equal, like they're just not a team. Hawthorn was a team that scared me the most of coming across in finals up until the grand final. Like, and because then a grand final, just the occasion becomes a thing. And again, I'm not trying to underestimate Sydney. It's just they, I think
Nope. Yeah.
it's just
Preliminary finals are hard to win. Like
yeah,
it's a tough ask.
yeah, and it is going up to Sydney, which is a ground they do play. They play reasonably well. Though we've got a good. Again, none of this matters at the moment, but we do have a decent rate. Like we've had a. I mean, they haven't beaten us in 8 years. That does.
That kind of
Well, it does.
scares me too.
Yeah, but at the same time, it does count for something because it's just like we do genuinely have just
We can
the
go
way
there
we.
with reckless abandon.
Yeah, well, and it does mean that there is something that, and it's the same two coaches over that time, so it does show that there is just something that. And again, it does come down to how you execute it on the day, but just as
Yeah. I
fundamentals
think
of
we've
what.
matched up well.
Yeah, that's the thing. We just match up well with them. We've had some close games in that time. Obviously, the one last year with
Hmm.
the Aaliyah spoil on the line, a couple of years before at Adelaide Oval, where
Scott Lysett
Scott Lysett and
kicking the goal.
Sam
I think
Mays
that
as
was
well.
10 points.
Yeah, it was, but yeah, it was close enough. So a lot of them have been close, and we've just been lucky enough to get across the line, and but that is part of it. It's just yeah, and like I look at midfield groups, like again, Isaac Heaney just while he's still a very good player, and he's played some really good footy, and obviously had a really good fourth quarter, I think, in the GWS game.
Yeah,
He can,
him and Chad Warner.
yeah, I guess he can thank Jack Buckley, I think it was, for saving his career in that marking attempt. But yeah, they've got some game winners there, but it's just we do too. And it's just like all things being equal, I just look across the lines and go, this is a gettable team in a preliminary final away from home, which is not something I'd be saying, I'd say about too many. And again, it sounds like I'm disrespecting Sydney. It's not. It's just I do think we match up quite well against
Yeah.
them, and they don't have a game-winning forward outside of maybe Tom Papley, and I don't know if that's. And it's not like I mean Joel Amartey won the game against the Crows, but it was the Crows, and Logan McDonald's just been a little bit inconsistent at times. He's got great potential and a great future probably still, but I
Yeah.
don't. He's not quite there yet. Now he could have a breakout game. I don't know. That's all to be written, but and Tom Papley's just been around for 10 years now. He's obviously we know who he is, but our problem sometimes comes against some of the tools, and then as long as we have parity in midfield, they're not going to get out against us. All that we have parity in midfield, and we're winning it kind of like in the game, like we did against Hawthorn at least. Then that restricts the amount of times that they go back, and that's just not a. If we can structure up well behind that midfield battle, and be in the contest against it, I just don't see us being losing massively against that forward line. So it is again. It's it's not like we're telling any new stories. It all comes down to the midfield battle. But we've shown a very good propensity over the last 8 to 10 weeks now that if we're pretty good in the midfield, then our back line is very, very good. So that's kind of
Oh yeah, yeah,
yeah.
100%.
And then it's
Yeah,
just going to be
a
taking
big
our
weight
opportunity.
falls on them.
Yeah, and it's just me taking the opportunities up forward, which again is probably where we're most question marked, I guess. But when you got Mitch Georgiades, if Mitch Georgiades pops up and kicks 3 or 4 goals, then we're going to be a long ways to.
Well, that's it.
Because
Yeah.
if he's
And
kicking those goals, then usually there's people kicking them around him, and we're getting a
Well,
score.
and something that I didn't touch on when he was my honourable mention in my votes for the Hawthorn game was that much like Rioli, because of how in a different way though, it's impact per possession, like with how accurately George is kicking, he doesn't need too many opportunities to make you hurt on the scoreboard. And Rioli is like, yeah, minimal touches, high impact, end up in goals more often than not. And I was just looking at the stats from the qualifying final. Sydney actually won clearance over GWS, more so around the ground. GWS actually won centre clearances. So, and yeah, it was just hard work for 3 quarters for Sydney. And then, yeah, GWS, which we've seen over 2 weeks now, and they've found themselves out of the finals for whatever reason. They just haven't been able to play a fourth quarter, which has gone against their own, statistics. I think it was Kingsley hadn't lost a game where they were ahead at 3-quarter time since being their coach, and he's lost two
Two
of the
weeks in a
biggest
row.
games. And yeah.
Yeah.
So, like I said before, and like our sentiments, like Sydney has started slow, and I guess it's what we would be hoping for, but we need to get our matchups right. To go on to player stats, the people who keep the goals for Sydney were their smaller forwards in Heaney, Papley, and Hayward.
Hmm.
And then on the other end, it was Hogan, Cadman, and then Callan Ward actually kicked 2 for GWS. So their tools actually kicked the goals. So we need to learn a lot still from the Geelong game and not be lulled into a false sense of security. We did a great job against Hawthorn. Watson got out and got his 3 goals, while one of them was fortuitous. The other 2 were hard earned, in my opinion,
Hmm.
for Watson on the weekend.
Yeah.
And then Ginnivan finished with the 2 in the end, although I don't think or was it
His
just the
impact.
one? His influence wasn't
He might have got the two, but
as
beyond that, it was just like, yeah, it really wasn't much of an
yeah.
influence. Yeah.
So again, with this small to medium defender makeup, Bergman probably had a down game after a best on ground game. He gave up a
Mm.
few goals, so we really need to get those matchups right. But like you said, the midfield needs to come to this game with the same intensity that we did on Friday night. Just cut off every single avenue early and make them pay on the way back to our forward 50, and hopefully getting in the hands of those guys who are really on song at the moment, kicking goals.
Yeah. Yeah.
We obviously need to shut the crowd up. And yeah, it goes without saying. An away trip, like, yeah, I dare say we'll have a decent contingent. We tend to kind of anywhere we go.
Yeah.
And it is a final, so you will get people kind of, making the effort to go as well.
Mm.
So yeah, shut up the crowd, jump them early.
And
That's
yeah,
all we can really do and build on it.
yeah, it was actually, yeah, touching back to the, kind of bookending the podcast, we started talking about the interesting, unique crowd mix that it was on Friday night. And, maybe that's a little bit of a nice little softener going into Sydney. It's not like, not to,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
yeah, they've had to deal with a little bit of a weird crowd. So set the tone early and kind of flip the script a little bit and make
It's
it.
what made the Geelong loss, yeah, so strange in a way as well, was because now with the Hawthorn game, like you said, the crowd like at times was quite volatile against us at our home
Mm,
ground. And then
yeah.
yeah, the Frio game, which we've spoken about, the showdown, which was hot. Yeah. So when we're pretty accustomed to a ferocious crowd,
Mm,
and a lot of pressure, we just need to keep our heads because yeah, like it's such a good opportunity to get into a
yeah.
grand final. Uh, I would have preferred GWS beat Brisbane because I thought that they'd probably have a good chance to beat Geelong as well, and I would have liked
Mm,
to play a interstate side at the G if we're lucky enough to get there, and I
mm,
stress if we're lucky enough. But we need to do this job first, and we're capable. Absolutely, there's no doubt in my mind we're capable. The odds don't reflect that at all, but
mm. Yeah, it's a lot
we've
closer
beaten them
than it.
before. We'd take a lot of confidence out of the fact that we've beaten them. We know how to beat them. They would be doing a lot of work behind the scenes to try and combat us. We need to just not be complacent.
Yeah, and lean on what we do well because when we really back ourselves in and play with like it's not much. We are one of the best teams in the competition. When it's just like making sure we hit that good Port Adelaide rather than that bad, and that all comes
Well, and
down to
we've
effort.
been written off
That all comes
time
down
and
to
time
effort,
again
and
this season, and we
yeah,
keep coming back. But there's no second chance now.
mm.
And people are, yeah, the odds are writing us off. I want prick Ken. I want fucking locked in Ken.
Mm.
Because yeah, hopefully that'll have a flow-on effect to the players.
Yeah, let's hope like Ken at the end of the game when we've won just comes out with a Jack Ginnivan mask and says hi to Grundy. So yeah, I said I see you. I said I see you here. No,
Yeah.
he doesn't need to cost himself any more money, but it's a massive, massive game coming up. It's really quite awesome to be previewing a preliminary final, and I certainly don't take it lightly that we're in this position. You got to embrace it as fans, but you've also got to understand it is very tough to get to a preliminary final. It's even tougher to get to a grand final, but we've put ourselves in an incredible position to do so, and that should be commended. But it's all ahead of us now. Nothing more to say than that. Give us a follow on all the socials. I love the interactions. Not the Hawthorn fans so much, but I muted those ones anyway. But the
It's
Port
pretty
fan,
funny.
yeah, it is. It is. Yeah, it just got annoying because my phone didn't stop. So, but yeah, all the Port fans, like the ones we've shouted out that have discovered the podcast or just given me funny anecdotes about how important those 3 years between 57 and 60 are. I love all of it. So, yeah, and as
Yeah,
I
thanks,
said,
guys. That's
yeah,
awesome.
as I said, Alberton on Friday night will be the place to be to watch both the women's team as well as obviously the preliminary final. And that's about it. I'm knackered, but it's a good knackered because it's been a big weekend and both it's really, really awesome to be this late in September and be reviewing and previewing both AFL men's and AFL women's. So yeah, it's a pretty cool place to be.
My nerves will be absolutely jangling come Friday night.
Absolutely, yeah. I don't know how I'm gonna. It's funny because it's Monday now, so we're just like, oh yeah, no, it's a game in a few days. But once it gets to Wednesday,
got a good chance.
Yeah, once it gets to Wednesday, it's gonna really start setting in. So, there's nothing more to say. Calm the pair. Let's make it to the last Saturday in September.
Go the fucking power.